On a cold, snowy night, a small light shines in the darkness of a distant mountain. Near a campfire, a bearded man pours himself a drink to warm up from the bitter cold. Suddenly, footsteps in the snow approach his fire, breaking the silence of the night. He takes a sip of his drink while watching the figure calmly approach him. The man finds the newcomer's light clothing odd, who says he's just there for a job. The visitor shows a photo on his phone, confirming the identity of his target, Simon Jones. Simon is impressed that he was found and asks if the Union sent him. He recognizes the man in the suit as the legendary Asian hitman known as Jay. Simon greets him and mentions that he's heard a lot about him from someone named Johnny. He comments that Johnny is Jay's only friend, but the hitman corrects him, saying he's just a colleague. Simon then asks if they're from the same country, and Jay explains that they're not. He realizes his comment sounded racist, and Jay confirms that it was a little. A tense silence hangs between the two as the campfire crackles in the snow. The two men stare at each other for a moment in silence before the inevitable showdown. The tension builds with the crackling of the fire illuminating the scene. Jay attacks first with a sharp steel wire, aiming for Simon. Simon is thrown back by the force of the attack, but manages to defend himself from the blow. He quickly grabs the wire with his hands to stop Jay's attack. Jay pulls the wire hard, injuring Simon's hand and knocking him off balance. Simon pulls out a small hatchet and uses it to block Jay's next attack. Jay's eyes glow with a blue light as he prepares for his next move. Their blades clash, creating sparks in the cold, dark night. Simon uses all his strength to push Jay's blade away with his hatchet. He manages to deflect the blow and create an opening to attack his opponent. With a clear path, Simon prepares a quick, direct strike with his weapon. However, Jay skillfully dodges and prepares an attack with his own knife. He manages to deflect Simon's hatchet with a precise move of his knife. Jay's attack hits Simon's shoulder, who cries out in pain from the wound. Simon doesn't give up and attempts a desperate strike with his other hand. Jay ducks to dodge the attack and spins his body for a powerful counter-attack. He throws the hatchet he took from Simon directly at him. The weapon hits Simon dead on, and he falls to the ground badly injured. Jay ends the fight with one last swing of the hatchet. Red drops slowly fall from the hatchet's blade onto the white snow. Lying on the ground, Simon coughs, a red stain on his lips, and admits there's a reason Jay is legendary. Jay asks if he knows the reason for the Union's order, and Simon confirms it's 'cause of Johnny. Jay thinks the Union is just unhappy with Johnny's new company. Simon laughs and reveals that the Union actually wants to eliminate Johnny and his entire company. He challenges Jay to say if he thinks the Union is wrong, and decides to give his own opinion first. Simon explains that the Union has monopolized all the hitman jobs in North America. Because of this, all hitmen have to bow down to the organization to get work. He says the industry is now controlled by people who have no respect for the profession. Looking at a group of executives, he prepares to ask Jay again. Simon asks if Jay really doesn't think the Union is wrong, but he says he doesn't make judgments. Jay coldly states that he just does the jobs he's given in his current situation. Simon laughs and says that they'll see what kind of jobs and situations Jay will get. Before he can finish his sentence, Simon's life fades away, and all he sees is Jay's reflection. Simon's body finally goes limp, and silence returns to the area. Jay turns and starts walking away, leaving the body behind in the snow. He wipes a bit of red from his face with a thoughtful expression about what he just heard. The story changes scenes and takes us to the city, where we see the imposing Union building. Inside a meeting room, a man informs Jay that he sent the target's information. Jay looks at his phone and thinks that this is exactly the situation Simon Jones predicted. He opens his phone and sees the photo of his next target, his former colleague, Johnny Wong. Jay then remembers a moment in the past when Johnny offered him a drink. He recalls always saying they were just colleagues, but Johnny treated him like a friend. Jay remembers that the Union used to pair up compatible hitmen for team jobs. His first job with Johnny was one of those, and they barely had time to introduce themselves. After the job, Johnny formally introduced himself and held out his hand for a handshake. Johnny commented that it was his first time working with another Asian hitman. He then suggested they be friends, but Jay coldly replied that he didn't have any friends. Johnny wasn't fazed and said that was perfect because now Jay had a friend. Jay tried to explain that he didn't need friends, but Johnny insisted it was a good opportunity. Over time, Johnny's persistence made him the only person Jay was close to in the business. In another memory, Johnny asks if Jay has ever thought about becoming an even closer colleague. Johnny then invites him to be his business partner, leaving Jay surprised. He reveals that he plans to start his own company because he's tired of the union system. Johnny also complains very expressively about the high fees the union charges. He invites Jay to join him, believing that together they could do something incredible. Jay turns down the offer immediately, which surprises Johnny with the speed of his response. Jay explains that he believes life, and especially work, should be done alone. Johnny sighs and admits he was already expecting that answer from Jay. He says that even knowing the answer, he still had to make the offer out loud. Johnny then says that if his company grew, Jay might be the one sent to take him out. Back in the present, Jay understands everything and confirms the target's identity with the representative. The man corrects Jay, saying the target is Johnny's entire company, not just him. He offers Jay $25 million for the job, an impressive amount. Jay questions why the union would pay him so much instead of using their own forces. The representative explains that they prefer to use Jay as an expensive missile to avoid their own losses. He states that Jay is one of the few capable of carrying out the mission alone and the most reliable. Jay accepts the job, but with one condition: he will completely destroy the company. In exchange for his service, he demands that Johnny's life be spared. Jay pressures him, saying that if he doesn't accept the job, the union will be in trouble. The man agrees as long as Jay leaves. Johnny's so broken that he can never get back on his feet. The scene shifts to a bustling city street at dusk. As he walks, Jay wonders why he bothered asking them to spare Johnny. He thinks that maybe he just didn't want to be the one to do it himself when he hears a voice. A boy approaches him on the street, trying to sell handmade bracelets. The boy says the bracelets have a mysterious power that Jay might need. Jay gets curious and asks the boy what kind of power the bracelet has. With a big smile, the boy replies that it's the power to live a new life. The boy's words catch Jay by surprise, leaving him speechless for a moment. Jay decides to buy a bracelet, thinking that maybe it's time to live differently. Now inside a building, Jay is surrounded by fallen bodies, thinking about finishing the job. He goes up the stairs and reflects that with the money from the job, he might be able to retire. At the top of the stairs, a hallway full of armed men awaits him for a confrontation. As more enemies advance, Jay questions what he would do if he actually retired. In the midst of the fight, he realizes he's never stopped to think about a life outside of work. Far away, Johnny Wong looks out over the city from his luxurious and quiet office. The door to his office bursts open, and Jay appears in the doorway, ready to fight. Johnny says the fact that Jay is there proves his company did well, and offers him a drink. Jay accepts the glass and downs the entire contents in one go without hesitation. Next, he throws the glass on the floor, shattering it into pieces. Jay declares that Johnny's company is finished, and that he destroyed everything with his own hands. Johnny replies that despite that, Jay doesn't look to be in very good shape. He throws his own glass at Jay, who dodges at the last second. Johnny rushes forward and attacks him, shattering a glass window with the impact. Jay is surprised by Johnny's strength and speed, who seem to be unprepared. He moves with agility and kicks Jay hard, sending him flying into a table. The impact breaks the table and leaves Jay momentarily stunned on the floor. Johnny then grabs a weapon that was hidden under the table. Jay gets up with difficulty, but his body doesn't seem to be responding to his commands. Johnny grabs him by the collar and yells in his face, asking why he's doing all this. He throws him against another table and continues yelling, getting more and more furious. With his eyes glowing red, he questions why Jay is coming after him. Johnny then points the weapon at Jay's chest, ready to fire. Jay's eyes glow with an intense blue light as he prepares to react. He manages to knock Johnny's weapon aside at the last second with a quick move. The shot hits the wall, and Jay takes the chance to counter-attack his opponent. Johnny is surprised by Jay's quick reaction, who manages to turn the tables. Jay lands a powerful punch on Johnny's face, knocking him off balance. With another blow, he knocks Johnny to the floor and pins him down. He then thinks about how to incapacitate Johnny for good, perhaps by disabling his hands or feet. However, Jay realizes he's also too injured to continue the fight. A voice suddenly applauds the scene, getting the attention of both men. Jay turns and asks who's there watching their fight. The union representative appears with reinforcements, saying he came to make sure the job was finished. In an instant, several laser sights are aimed at Johnny on the floor. Jay recognizes the man and his soldiers, but has no time to react. The soldiers fire at Johnny without any hesitation, following the order. Jay turns in shock and tries to stop them, but it's too late to save him. He yells at the representative, reminding him of their deal to spare Johnny's life. The man just tells him not to get worked up, but Jay is hit by a shot. With a look of pure fury, Jay glares at the man who betrayed him. The representative simply says that it's all just business. After all, he reveals that the union realized exceptional people like them are a threat. The man declares that's why both had to be eliminated. With his eyes glowing, Jay curses the man and his dirty business. The soldiers then open fire on Jay, who is defenseless and surrounded. He is hit by multiple shots and falls to the floor, his life gone. His body hits the floor, and the bracelet he bought begins to glow. A mystical energy emanates from the bracelet, enveloping his lifeless body. The energy forms a complex magic circle around Jay. A butterfly of light emerges from the bracelet and flies away from him. Suddenly, Jay finds himself inside a car, stopped at a traffic light at night. He looks at his hand and sees the glowing bracelet, wondering if he's alive. A driver outside complains that he hit a delivery guy who came out of nowhere. Jay hears the man speaking Korean and wonders how he ended up in Korea. The drunk driver thinks about running, and Jay realizes he's in the delivery guy's body. He then yells at the driver through his phone, completely scaring him. Jay, in the delivery guy's body, lands a hard punch on the drunk driver's face. The man falls to the ground, asking someone to call the police, completely dazed. Jay shows no mercy and continues to kick the driver lying on the ground. With the driver passed out, he gets in the car and reflects on his situation. He realizes he passed away in the United States and was reborn in someone's body in Korea. Jay swears revenge on those who betrayed and took him down, determined to make them pay. He then remembers that he's now in Korea, far from his enemies. He knows he can't just drive to the United States to get his revenge. And even if he could, the Union isn't a group you can just find. Tired, he decides he needs to rest and process everything that happened. For now, he decides to go to the original body's home to rest. Jay reflects on how hits need to be precise and require information. He decides to hack the body's owner's phone to find out more about him. Using the original owner's face, he uses facial recognition to unlock the phone. In seconds, he gains access to all the information on the device. Jay arrives at the small, simple apartment of the body's former owner. He found the address on the phone and notes how the place is ordinary, with nothing special about it. Opening the fridge, he realizes there's nothing to eat in the apartment. Jay discovers that the young man's name is Jin Jaein, and he is 27 years old. He finds out that Jaein had a difficult life, full of failures and a lot of debt. The empty water bottle in the trash reflects the young man's precarious situation. And to make matters worse, Jaein ended up being taken out by a drunk driver. A miserable life. Suddenly, someone starts banging violently on the door, calling for Jin Jaein. Jay wonders who would be shouting at this time of night and braces for the worst. He opens the door and finds two men in suits staring at him intimidatingly. The men introduce themselves as collectors and question him about the overdue interest. Jay understands they are the loan sharks Jin Jaein borrowed money from. As the men intimidate him, Jay peeks through the door and notices something. A neighbor is looking through the crack of her door, scared by the commotion in the hallway. She complains about the noise in the middle of the night and slams her door shut. The loan shark starts searching the apartment, and one of them finds the car keys. The head loan shark accuses him of buying a car instead of paying his debt. Jay suggests they go outside to sort this out and offers the car as payment. One of the men gets angry at Jay's attitude and threatens him for his audacity. The group's boss interrupts him and tells him to calm down for a moment. They talk among themselves and decide that taking the car is better than going back empty-handed. The three of them go down to the parking lot to assess Jaein's car. The boss whispers to his henchmen to undervalue the car and offer little for it. He tells Jay the car only covers a few months of interest, which Jay questions. The loan shark points out the damage on the car, saying it's clearly been in an accident. Jay walks towards them and asks if they can judge just by its appearance. Suddenly, one of the loan sharks is hit by a surprise attack from Jay. Jay tells them to look at the car's interior as well and throws him inside the vehicle. The other two loan sharks are shocked and scared by Jay's sudden action. They call him crazy and move in to attack him at the same time. Jay easily dodges the first attack and takes him down with a precise blow. He then hits the second loan shark with a hard punch to the stomach. With his henchmen on the ground, the head loan shark realizes he's lost his numerical advantage. Jay knows that men like him have only two options: run or fight. The loan shark then decides to make one last desperate move to try and survive. Jay expects the loan shark to pull a gun, but he's not in America. The man pulls a knife and runs towards Jay, yelling that he's going to take him out. Jay easily dodges the attack and prepares to disarm his opponent. With a quick move, he twists the loan shark's arm and catches the knife in mid-air. The loan shark is paralyzed with fear, not understanding what just happened. Jay hits him with a punch to the face, breaking his nose and stunning him. He kicks the loan shark, who falls to the ground, defeated and with no strength to react. Jay tosses the knife into the air and catches it masterfully, ready for the final blow. He pins the loan shark's hand with the knife, who screams in pain from the injury. Jay threatens to end him if he ever shows up again, and the man agrees, terrified. He then throws the car keys to the loan sharks and tells them to leave. The group's boss gets in the car, still in shock from the beating they took. In the rearview mirror, he watches Jay standing there and wonders who that guy is. He doesn't understand why someone so strong let himself be intimidated and still gave up the car. Jay gets rid of the stolen car to avoid trouble and can finally rest. Back in the apartment, he sees the light in his room is on and finds the situation strange. Upon entering, he finds his neighbor waiting for him and wonders what she wants. He's confused by her presence in his apartment, just wanting to rest. The neighbor says she saw everything he did to the loan sharks in the parking lot. She explains that she was ready to call the police, but he took care of them on his own. Jay asks if she's going to report him, but the woman says she's just curious. She admits she became curious about him and wanted to know more about his strength. Jay dismisses her, saying he needs to rest, and goes into his apartment. The neighbor is a bit embarrassed by the dismissal, but understands the situation. Finally alone, Jay throws himself on the bed, exhausted from the day's events. He tries to sleep, but can't relax after everything that's happened. His stomach rumbles with hunger, breaking the silence of the dark room. He realizes he's hungry and decides to go out for a quick bite. Jay decides to go to a 24-hour fast food joint to get a burger. He sits down to eat and remembers the reason he chose that place. He remembers a conversation with Johnny about that fast food chain. Jay would question him for always choosing the same place to eat. Johnny explained that the burger there was the perfect food for a hitman. He liked the fact that the taste was the same anywhere in the world. Johnny said it prevented issues with food and kept him in shape. He also liked that it was a 24-hour place, perfect for the job. Jay would get annoyed with Johnny because the more he talked, the more sense he made. Back in the present, Jay eats his burger and mourns Johnny's passing. He thinks that they were both taken out, but only he got the chance to come back. A woman enters the diner complaining of hunger and sits down near him. Jay gets annoyed by the interruption of his thoughts about Johnny. He wonders who this woman is and where she came from so suddenly. As he eats, the bracelet on his wrist begins to glow again. The bracelet's mystical energy manifests once more without warning. Jay wonders why the bracelet is glowing again and what it means. He then notices that the woman's hand is also glowing with the same energy. The woman looks at her hand, surprised by the sudden and unexpected glow. The two stare at each other in the diner, both with their hands glowing intensely. The woman asks if he's Jay, and he's shocked that she knows his name. She realizes from his reaction that he's not the Jay she knew and is disappointed. The woman looks at the young man in front of her and sees the image of Jay in his old body. The glow on their hands fades, and the connection between them is broken. Jay realizes she mistook him for Johnny and tries to correct the misunderstanding. Furious, the woman attacks him, yelling that he's the Johnny he took out. Jay is completely confused by the sudden and unexpected accusation. She knocks him to the floor with a quick quick blow and easily pins him down. The woman accuses him of betraying their friendship and blames him for Johnny's end. He tries to explain, saying she needs to listen to him before jumping to conclusions. Jay reveals that he wasn't the one who finished Johnny, but the Union was. He says the Union took them out, and the woman asks if he was taken out too. A diner employee shows up and tells the two of them to stop fighting. The woman apologizes sheepishly and lets go of Jay, who is still on the floor. The employee mops the floor around them with a dirty mop. He grumbles that if they're in such a hurry, they should get a room. Now seated at a table, the woman expresses her frustration and then jealousy. She accuses him of refusing her business proposal, but accepting to destroy her company. Jay agrees the situation is strange, but nothing beats the fact they've come back from the other side. He finishes his meal and wonders how all of this could have happened to them. The image of the boy selling the bracelet comes back to his mind, and he has an idea. Jay asks if she bought a bracelet on the street from an Asian boy. He says the boy told him the bracelet had the power to give a new life. Jay shows the mark on his wrist and reveals that he also bought the bracelet. The woman then asks Jay what he plans to do now. With his eyes glowing red, Jay declares that he will get his revenge on the Union. She clarifies that she wants to know his immediate plans, not his long-term ones. Jay says he already found his body's owner's house and came from there. She suggests they spend the night there, as she's too exhausted to look for her own house. The woman explains that she used a lot of energy to get out of the ground where she was buried. Jay is surprised to learn that she also woke up buried in a grave. She says she just wants to take a shower and sleep, and Jay agrees it's a good idea. The scene changes to Jay's apartment with the bathroom light on. The woman takes a hot shower to relax after such a long day. Jay waits for her, sitting silently on the bed, thinking about the situation. On the street, they talk, and she says she would have hated him if he had followed the plan. She admits that she probably would have met her end at his hands one day if things had been different. She asks if he still hates her enough to want to take her out now. Jay replies that he doesn't, and she stretches, relieved by his answer. The woman says he already paid for his choice with his life and learned his lesson. Jay becomes thoughtful and wonders if he really learned anything from all this. The woman comes out of the bathroom, praising the hot water and breaking the silence. Jay turns to speak to her, but is shocked by what he sees. She is completely naked, drying her hair with a towel, not caring at all. He covers his eyes in embarrassment and asks why she's walking around naked. She replies that she wasn't going to wear the dirty clothes she was buried in. Jay then grabs one of his shirts and throws it to her to wear. The bedroom light goes out, and night finally falls over the apartment. The two sleep on makeshift beds on the floor of the small room. The woman, lying on the floor, asks Jay how he plans to get his revenge. She remembers his promise to make the Union pay and wants to know the plan. Jay replies with a single word business, leaving the woman confused. Jay suggests they get some sleep, and the woman agrees they don't need to rush. The next day, they take a taxi to Johnny's house, while she ignores calls from her father. She complains about being reborn in a woman's body, and Jay says he looks like his old self. Jay says his original face was more handsome, and she accuses him of making bad jokes. She realizes they're speaking Korean and reading the language without any difficulty. Jay speculates it might be like people who wake up from a coma speaking another language. The taxi arrives at its destination, and they prepare to enter the house. The two get out of the car and look at the imposing mansion in front of them. They approach the gate of Johnny's large and luxurious house. Jay rings the doorbell and waits for someone to answer. A surprised voice on the intercom recognizes the woman as Somi and asks how she's there. Jay is intrigued by the reaction of the person on the intercom and waits for more. Another voice identifies himself as Somi's father and tells her to come in immediately. The woman smiles and confirms that this is indeed her house, not Johnny's. She tells Jay she needs to go inside to understand the situation, and they say their goodbyes. Jay realizes Johnny's situation will be complicated, having to pretend to be part of the family. He feels relieved to have woken up in the body of someone who lives alone. Jay checks Jae-in's phone and confirms he had no family or friends. He reflects that he also lived a lonely life until the day he passed. Alone in his apartment, Jay feels comfortable with the absence of ties. He thinks that if he said he had no friends, Johnny would probably get mad. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and Jay realizes Johnny arrived sooner than expected. He opens the door and is met with an unexpected and hostile figure. A man with a knife attacks him as soon as the door opens. Jay reacts quickly and blocks the attack with his arm, avoiding injury. The man tries to attack him again, but Jay is ready for the confrontation. He dodges the second blow and prepares to disarm the attacker. Jay grabs the man's arm and twists it hard to disarm him. He pins the man's hand with the knife, incapacitating him with a precise blow. The man is shocked by the pain and the speed with which he was overpowered. Jay throws him to the ground and prepares to question him about the attack. The knife and the water bottle fall to the floor during the intense fight. The man looks at Jay with fear and surprise, not understanding what happened. Jay stares at him coldly, demanding to know who sent him to attack. His eyes glow with an intense blue light as he prepares to strike. He lands a powerful punch on the man's face, who falls to the floor. The man cries out in pain from the impact of the blow and is stunned. Jay pressures him, asking again who sent him to take him out. The man tries to speak, but the blood in his mouth prevents him from answering. Jay, with his eyes glowing red, asks if it was the Union. The man tries to speak, but the blood in his mouth prevents him from answering. Jay, with his eyes glowing red, asks if it was the Union. The man finally manages to stammer a reply, denying he's from the Union. He reveals that he was sent by someone else, and not by the organization. Jay attacks him again, furious with the man's lie and evasion. He lands another hard punch on the man's face, who can't defend himself. The man falls to the floor, knocked out, and his glasses fly off from the impact. Jay picks up the knife and reflects that the Union wouldn't know about his current situation. He approaches the fallen man and prepares to question him again. With the knife in hand, Jay threatens him to finally reveal the truth. Jay stops the attack with the knife inches from the man's neck, leaving him in shock. He sits on top of the attacker and demands to know who sent him to take him out. The man hesitates, but the blade at his neck forces him to start talking. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Sami's siblings wait nervously for news. Johnny, in Somi's body, arrives home and is greeted by his worried father. The father says her siblings skipped work, but they seem more scared than worried. Johnny realizes that the two siblings are involved in Somi's demise. Outside, Somi's brother despairs on the phone, asking what happened. He yells at the person on the other end of the line, questioning how Somi came back to life. He asks if the gate camera was checked to see how she arrived. The person confirms that Somi arrived by taxi with a man who later left alone. He orders the man to be found and eliminated, and so he doesn't become a witness. Somi's brother gets annoyed with the extra charge and calls it after sales service. He hangs up the phone, frustrated with the contractor's incompetence. His sister calls him, and he turns to talk to her, still nervous. She asks what happened, and he says the contractor failed the mission. The brother suggests that maybe it's for the best, but his sister doesn't understand. She tells him to stop, reminding him that Somi is still his younger sister. He corrects her, saying Somi is the daughter of a mistress, not a real sister. He reminds her that their mother's illness got worse after finding out about Somi. He argues that their father might leave the company to Somi and asks if their mother would rest in peace. The brother yells at her to remember what's at stake for the family. He says that everything he's doing is ultimately for her own good as well. Back at Jay's apartment, night falls, and the light from the window goes out. Jay interrogates the man, who reveals he doesn't know the exact identity of the client. He thinks that taking the man out now would be a problem for cleaning up the scene. The man, in turn, wonders who Jay is and how he's so strong and fast. He's impressed by Jay's speed and strength during the fight. The man thinks about attacking him again while he's distracted. Jay senses the man's intention and gives him a threatening look. He says it won't work because his experience and instincts alerted him. Jay feels the man's murderous intent and prepares for the worst. He He asks the man if he wants to live, and the man agrees, scared. Jay opens the door and tells him to leave, saying he never found him. He warns him to never again accept a job that involves them. Jay threatens to end him if he ever shows up again, and the man agrees, terrified. He slams the door shut after the man leaves, finally alone. Outside, the man calls his boss and reports what happened. The boss gets angry about the failure and demands that he find the target immediately. The man hangs up and says he'll return the money if they never contact him again. At the mansion, Sami's brother gets the news of the refund and is furious. He yells at his contact on the phone, outraged by the contractor's incompetence. A woman appears and greets him, interrupting his angry call. He hangs up the phone and looks around to see who is there with him. He orders a new contractor to be found to finish the job. Meanwhile, Johnny, in Sami's body, investigates the phone and understands the situation. He discovers that Somi's father is the chairman of the HK group, and the siblings are the children of the chairman's first wife. Johnny finds out that the youngest daughter was taken out the day before. He concludes that the half-siblings had her eliminated because of the company inheritance. Sami's sister approaches the table and greets her hesitantly. She seems worried and asks if Sami is okay and what happened to her. Johnny, in Sami's body, makes up that he doesn't remember anything and must have had too much to drink. He suspects the sister is just trying to find out how much he knows about what happened. The sister holds his hand and thanks her for coming back, leaving Johnny a bit confused. From the girl's expression, he realizes she seems genuinely concerned. Johnny also thinks that Somi's sister is actually pretty cute. At that moment, someone's footsteps approach them in the dining room. The sister gets scared when she sees her older brother arriving and quickly lets go of Johnny's hand. She thinks her brother would eliminate her too if she got in the way of his plans. The girl regrets being so scared that she can't say anything about the situation. Seeing the tears in her eyes, Johnny tries to console her, calling her Miss, comforts her, saying he understands how she feels and won't let it happen again. The sister accepts the comfort but finds the way Somi is talking strange. Later, Johnny calls Jay and asks if he's okay after finding out about the situation. He's surprised a hitman went after Jay, but figured he'd handle it. Johnny realizes the same person who ordered Somi to be taken out also sent someone to eliminate Jay. Jay explains that the hitman didn't know the client's identity, but he thinks he already knows who it is. He says that either way, they need to take care of that person before anything else. Johnny then reminds Jay of their conversation about getting revenge on the union using business. He says that Jay's idea of starting a company to go against the union was right. Jay replies that he was actually hoping Johnny would tell him what to do, since he has experience. Johnny is surprised that Jay doesn't have a plan, but says there's a quick way to start. He reveals that the fastest way is to take over a business that already exists. Johnny's suggestion leaves Jay thoughtful about the possibilities. The night passes as he thinks about the plan they just discussed. The next day, Jay regrets not asking the hitman if he belonged to any organization. While in the bathroom, he hears a noise coming from the front door. Someone starts banging very hard on his door, breaking the silence. Jay wonders if the hitman came back, even after the warning he gave. Hearing the voice outside, he recognizes that it's the loan sharks from before. He opens the door and asks what the two of them are doing there again. The loan sharks, with their bruised faces, nervously say they came to collect the debt. An older man appears and tells the two to get out of the way, treating them like subordinates. Jay is intrigued when he realizes that man is the head of the loan sharks. The man introduces himself as the boss of the loan company Jayan borrowed money from. Jay smiles as he realizes he's found the existing business he was looking for. The scene flashes back to an earlier moment, showing an expensive car arriving. The head of the loan sharking operation lights a cigarette while listening to his men's report. Baekjum Tae, president of Platinum Finance, complains that they came back with a car and not money. His henchmen apologize, but he scolds them for not having the tribute money. He gets even more annoyed when he learns they were beaten up by the debtor. Angrily, Baek-jum kicks one of them, saying the debtor is just a delivery guy. The man justifies himself, saying the guy was a really good fighter, maybe ex-military. Tired of the excuses, the boss decides he'll handle the situation personally. He says he wants to see with his own eyes who this tough guy is. Back in the present, he faces Jae and asks if he was the one who beat up his men. Baek-jum says Jae doesn't look like much and tells him to come with them. He threatens Jae, saying they have a special way of dealing with debtors like him. The henchmen think Jae will definitely refuse the offer and start a fight. To everyone's surprise, Jae calmly agrees to go with them. The head of the loan sharks is confused and doesn't understand why he gave up so easily. He concludes that Jae realized he was no match, and that even though he could fight, he wouldn't be a problem. Outside a warehouse, the henchmen wait nervously, not understanding the situation. They talk among themselves, confused by Jae's calmness and what he might be planning. Inside the warehouse, Jae is tied to a chair and carefully observes the place. He analyzes the makeshift office and notes the simplicity of the place. Jae thinks ironically that the place must be terrible to heat or cool. Looking at a small gym area, he wonders how much the rent is there. The head of the loan sharks and his men approach him to begin the interrogation. Baek-jum taunts him, but Jae thinks he just needs to inspect the company he's about to take over. The boss explains that in their business, they don't like those who pay quickly because they lose out on interest. But he says that with debtors like Jae, it's better to get the money out of them all at once. He demands payment, and Jae questions how he would pay if he doesn't even have enough for the interest. The boss suggests he call everyone he knows and desperately ask for money. Jae replies that no one would lend money to someone who has already turned to loan sharks. Baek-jum agrees and says that's why he needs to sound like he's about to be finished. He then orders his men to help him, put a little desperation in his voice. The henchmen start beating him mercilessly to force him to cooperate. The boss watches the scene coldly while calmly smoking his cigarette. After the beating, Jae finally gives in and asks them to stop, saying he'll make the call. Satisfied, the boss tells his men to stop and give him back his phone. One of the henchmen approaches and hands the phone to Jae, who is still tied up. In the reflection of the phone's screen, Jae's eyes glow an intense red. Suddenly, one of the henchmen is hit by a surprise blow and is shocked. Jae, who has freed himself from the ropes, uses his own phone to strike the man in the head. The others are speechless, wondering if he's completely lost his mind. He quickly moves towards the next henchman with the phone in his hand. With a swift move, he hits the other loan shark in the face with the phone. The man cries out in pain and covers his eyes as Jae prepares for the next one. Chaos erupts in the warehouse with the sound of the fight, men being taken down. With the henchman on the floor, Jae slowly walks towards the group's boss. Baek-jum yells for the men outside to come in and help him in the fight. The henchmen outside pretend not to hear anything and remain still, afraid. Seeing that he's alone, he decides to fight and prepares for the showdown with Jae. Baek-jum starts the attack with a high, fast kick towards Jae. Jae blocks the attack with his forearm without much difficulty. The two begin to exchange blows, and the boss is surprised by Jae's speed. Jae dodges a punch with a quick, precise movement of his eyes. He then counter-attacks with a powerful punch that hits the boss's face. Jae recognizes that his opponent is strong and fast, and that he's not the boss for nothing. The boss is impressed that Jae blocked all of his blows. He underestimates Jae, thinking he's just a gym fighter with no real experience. However, Jae easily dodges his next attack with incredible agility, and lands a powerful uppercut on Baek-jum, Tae's chin, who feels the impact. The blow is so strong that it leaves him completely stunned and vulnerable. Baek-jum staggers back, trying to recover from the punch he took. Jae takes advantage of the opening and lands a hard kick on his opponent. The blow knocks him to the ground, and Jae prepares to end the fight once and for all. He finishes the confrontation with one last devastating punch to the face of the fallen boss. Jae continues to beat the head of the loan sharks, who is already down and defenseless on the floor. He stops the attack and repeats the boss's words, saying there's still no desperation in his voice. Tae stares at him with his eyes wide with pure terror and surprise. Desperate, he begs Jae to stop the beating and asks if they can talk. Jae agrees with a smile and suggests they talk a little business. A while later, Jae informs the bruised boss that he's taking over his company. Baek Joom Tae asks indignantly if this is a hostile takeover. Jae replies that this is how things have always worked in the underworld. He realizes the boss doesn't understand the situation and offers to explain it better. Baek Joom Tae explains that the Seal underworld is divided between two major groups. He reveals that his company operates in Seogwang's territory, which is why he pays tribute. Jae understands there are organizations like the Union there and asks what else there is. The boss warns that Seogwang won't let it slide and that Jae will be taken out soon. Unfazed, Jae says that he'll have to take over Seogwang too, leaving the man in shock. Baek Joom Tae tries to explain that he doesn't understand the scale of these organizations' power. Jae hears about their strength but calmly replies that he now understands the situation. He declares his simple plan first, take over Seogwang, and then the other group. Jae states that only then will he have total control of the Seoul underworld. Baek Joom Tae stares at him and thinks that this guy is completely insane. Suddenly, one of the henchmen runs in, warning that Seogwang has arrived to collect. The boss is surprised and nervous about the unexpected arrival of the collectors. A man in a suit and his subordinate enter the warehouse, calling for Boss Baek. Baek Joom Tae asks Jae to be quiet and says they'll talk after the man leaves. Jae just watches the scene unfold in silence without saying a word. The boss greets manager Kim, who finds the less than warm reception strange. The manager notices Baek Joom Tae's bruised face and asks what happened. Kim says it doesn't matter and that he's just there to pick up the tribute money. Suddenly, Jae interjects and says that he won't be taking any money today. The manager asks who he is, and Jae replies that from today on, the business is his. He declares that they will no longer pay tribute to Seogwang. Baek Joom Tae despairs, thinking he told that crazy guy to keep quiet. The manager asks who this guy is, and Baek Joom Tae explains that he was a debtor. The man gets angry at the audacity, and Baek Joom Tae tries to say the situation is confusing. The manager kicks the boss, demanding that he explain properly what's going on. He grabs him by the collar, but Baek Joom Tae can't speak out of shame. The man accuses Baek Joom Tae of having joined the rival group, Dongsan. As the boss tries to explain, the manager demands that he speak up. Jae surprises everyone by attacking the Seogwang manager with a knee strike. He scolds him, saying that even though he works for a big company, he's just an employee. Baek Joom Tae is worried, but at the same time feels satisfied with the scene. Lying on the floor, the manager accuses Jae of being from Dongsan and threatens him for invading their territory. Jae coldly replies that he's not from Dongsan, leaving the man on the floor. He declares that this is now his territory and tells the manager to take the message back. Baek Joom Tae watches the scene, not understanding what Jae is trying to do. The manager is shocked that Jae is simply letting him go after everything. He spits out some blood and agrees to leave the premises immediately. The man runs for the exit, yelling that he's going to tell his company everything. The boss despairs, thinking Seogwang will think he's involved in this. He runs after the manager, saying he'll explain everything, but Jae questions him. Baek Joom Tae insists he needs to explain in more detail and runs out of the warehouse. Jae watches the boss run off and is a bit confused by the situation. Baek Joom Tae desperately runs after manager Kim, who is already getting into the car. With a bloody face, Kim yells that he doesn't know what the boss is plotting, but it's over for him. Baek insists it's a misunderstanding, and the manager agrees to listen but wants him to be quick. He explains that Jae was a good debtor, but snapped and beat up his men and him. He finishes by saying Jae wants to take over the company and asks for help, as he couldn't explain before. Manager Kim finds the story of a single man defeating all of them hard to believe. Even so, he decides to act and promises to bring all the branch employees to finish Jae. The manager's car then speeds off, leaving Baek Joom Tae behind. One of the henchmen asks if they should get ready, but Baek tells them to stay out of it. He's confident that, as soon as Seogwang's reinforcements arrive, Jae will be finished. Back in the warehouse, Jae calmly asks if the conversation outside went well. Baek Joom Tae comes back inside and says he explained everything and is leaving now. Jae stops him, asking to talk a bit more, which intrigues the boss. The boss thinks he just needs to stall and buy time until the reinforcements arrive. To buy time, Kim, he asks if Jae really intends to take over the entire Seoul underworld. Tae asks why he wants so much power and money, and Jae replies that he needs both. Jae reveals that his ultimate goal is to build a company big enough to destroy the Union. Baek asks why take over his company, and Jae says it was the fastest way a colleague suggested. At that moment, a car screeches to a halt outside, interrupting the conversation. Several men get out of the vehicle, preparing to invade the warehouse. Manager Kim returns with a small army of men armed with bats. They gather in front of the warehouse door, ready for the attack. The door bursts open, and Kim enters, yelling for them to come out. Jae turns and asks what's happening, while Baek smiles victoriously. The boss says with a malicious grin that now Jae is completely finished. One of Kim's men confirms that the message was received and that this is the company's answer. From the back of the crowd, someone yells the order to take Jae out immediately. The armed men advance all at once towards Jae for the attack. Jae just watches the scene with a bored expression on his face. Night falls over the warehouse, and the inevitable confrontation is about to begin. A short time later, silence takes over the inside of the place. A bloody metal bat is shown on the floor amidst the chaos. Jae is standing in the middle of dozens of fallen bodies all over the warehouse. Tae looks at the scene in complete shock, unable to believe Jae's strength. Jae calmly walks among the bodies of the men he just defeated. He approaches the fallen manager, repeats that the company is now his and will not pay tribute. With a cold look, Jae steps on the man's head and asks if he understood correctly. Terrified, Manager Kim stammers that he understood the message perfectly. The tension in the air is palpable as Jae decides what to do next. One last man standing still tries to fight and advances on Jae. The order to take him out still echoes in his mind as he attacks. Tae hears the sound of the impact and realizes something is wrong. He notices the sound wasn't of a skull breaking, but of metal against metal. The attacker is shocked at how quickly Jae managed to block his attack. With a threatening look, Jae questions the man, saying that it doesn't make sense. In the blink of an eye, Jae knocks him off balance and throws him to the ground. The man begs for his life, but Jae finishes him without hesitation. Already tired of the situation, Jae tells them to get their men and disappear. Tae watches Manager Kim and his men flee hastily from the place. Jae even saved his own number in Tae's phone and told him to let him know if anything happened. Tae finds it ridiculous to have to report to Jae as if he were his new boss. One of his men comes in and asks if Manager Kim managed to get rid of that crazy guy. Baek replies that it was actually the other way around, leaving his subordinate speechless. The henchman asks if they should do something about it, and that Baek dares him to try it himself. He then tells his men to take a break and disappear for a while, which confuses them. Baek knows that Manager Kim will report everything to his superiors, and that he knows who's responsible. He's sure that Kim's boss will want to eliminate not just Jae, but all of them as well. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Manager Kim complains about the pain in his dislocated jaw. His superior arrives, and Kim apologizes for having to report in person, but the situation was complicated. The Sagwang manager, Bangman Guy, says he hopes the story is worth it. Manager Kim confirms that it is and prepares to tell him everything that happened. In a luxurious restaurant, Bangman Guy listens to the report attentively with an air of boredom. He summarizes that a debtor took over Bak's company and defeated Seodwang's men. Bang agrees that the situation is strange and offers to simplify things even further. He concludes that Platinum Finance teamed up with someone skilled and attacked them. For him, what matters is that they didn't receive the tribute and were also attacked. With a cold look, he declares that someone needs to take responsibility for this. He orders his men to capture Tae, who is probably already trying to escape. In the car, Baek listens to the radio talking about how life sometimes seems to be hard on people. With a bruised face, he agrees that there really are times when everything goes wrong. The host says people often say that everything passes, but you have to hang in there. Bake reflects that the problem is not knowing when this bad phase will finally be over. The radio then asks what is needed in times like these, but Bake doesn't hear the answer. A flash of light blinds his vision, and he realizes something is wrong on the road. Suddenly, his car is blocked, and armed men surround him to capture him. One of the men calls his boss and informs him that they have successfully captured Bake Joom Tae. Red liquid drips onto the warehouse floor, showing the violence of the situation. Fallen Bake Joom Tae regrets not being able to hear of the radio commentator's remark. Manager Bang says he's already made his decision and doesn't want to hear explanations. Bake realizes how scary Bang is for having predicted his escape and captured him so quickly. Bang says his conclusion is that someone needs to be held responsible for all of this. He then threatens Bak, telling him to bring Jin Jai in there if he doesn't want to be the one to blame. Bang says it doesn't matter how he does it because this is Bak's problem. The camera focuses on the warehouse, ceiling as silence takes over the place. Back at the warehouse, Bak calls Jay and remembers he told him to contact him if anything happened. On the other end of the line, Jay corrects him, saying he told him to report, not contact. Bake stammers and asks Jay to come to the company because something happened. He thinks about how to trick Jay so he won't realize it's a trap set by Sagwang. To surprises Bak by asking if he's been captured, leaving him in shock. He then instructs Bak to reply, of course, if he's calling for help. On the other side of the city, Jay hangs up the phone and says he's heading over there immediately. The call ends and Bak is left in silence, completely shocked by the situation. He informs them that Jay is coming and his subordinate asks what happened on the call. Bake looks at his phone screen and wonders why Jay would come to rescue him. On the street, Jay looks at his phone, thoughtful about the call he just received. He can't get a taxi because the company is in a very remote area of the city. Outside the warehouse, Kim's henchmen wait confidently that manager Bang will handle it. They comment that Bang has more skills than his position requires and earned a lot of credit in the past. One of them explains that Bang lost power because his faction was defeated in an internal political war. One of the men explains that Bang didn't join another faction and simply acted according to his beliefs. His colleague asks if what he learned was about a man's loyalty. He replies that he learned the lesson that, if the rope you're holding is rotten, it's better to find a new one. Suddenly, one of the henchmen spots Jay approaching them in the dark. Jay arrives on an electric scooter, and the men panic at his presence. One of them asks his manager what they should do now that Jay has arrived. The manager pulls out a knife and declares that he won't go down so easily this time. Jay's electric scooter sits parked outside the silent warehouse. A short time later, Jay has already defeated all the men outside with ease. With the manager's knife in hand, he wonders if he should take it before going into the warehouse. The warehouse door opens slowly, revealing the scene inside. Manager Bang sees Jay enter and wonders if that guy is Jin Jaein. He thinks Jay doesn't look very strong and asks why he's there. Jay calmly replies that he came to rescue his employee. Bake Joom Tae is shocked to hear Jay refer to him as one of his employees. Manager Bang concludes that Bake is in cahoots with Jay, which he desperately denies. Bake Joom thinks angrily that this guy is a complete madman for making the situation worse. Jay faces Manager Bang with a cold, challenging look, ready for the confrontation. He then turns to Bake Joom Tae and tells him to stay quiet in a corner. Bake obeys immediately and slowly moves away to the corner of the warehouse. He watches the two men staring each other down, afraid of what's about to happen. Manager Bang thinks to himself that his conclusion about the two of them was correct. Bake realizes he's completely screwed because now Bang is sure he's a traitor. Without wasting any more time, Jay quickly advances towards his opponent. He attacks with a knife, aiming directly at Manager Bang's face. Bang reacts at the last second and prepares to dodge the fatal blow. With impressive agility, the manager dodges Jay's attack. Jay is surprised by his opponent's reaction speed. He continues to attack, but Bang manages to dodge all the blows with ease. The two exchange a series of quick, precise attacks in the middle of the warehouse. Jay stops for a moment to analyze the situation of their fight. He thinks that at first glance, it looks like Bang took a beating from his attacks. But in reality, none of his blows landed squarely, only scratching him. Bang realizes it's not that Jay can't hit him, but rather that it's like a shield that can only be scratched. Jay then decides he just needs to scratch him in the right place to win the fight. He advances again with the knife in hand, aiming for a specific spot on Bang's body. The reflection in the manager's glasses shows Jay's attack approaching quickly. Jay manages to land a cut on Bang's forehead, which surprises him. Blood starts to run down the Saodwong manager's face without stopping. Jay thinks that the forehead is a place where the skin is thin and bleeds a lot even with a superficial cut. He remembers how professional fighters use this technique to create the appearance of a serious injury. Manager Bang tries to stop the bleeding, but the flow is too intense to stop. Jay knows that with his vision blocked, distance control and reactions become more difficult. Bang tries to react to Jay's attack, but his vision is completely compromised by the blood. Jay takes the opportunity to disarm him with a well-aimed kick to the hand. The knife flies through the air and falls to the ground, far from the two fighters in the middle of the warehouse. Baekjum Tae picks up the knife from the floor, completely confused about what's happening. Manager Bang wipes the blood from his face and says that now that the toy is gone. He straightens his tie and declares that now they will fight for real. Jay agrees, and the two prepare for the final, unarmed confrontation in the warehouse. The two begin to exchange punches in an intense and balanced fight in the middle of the warehouse. Even without the knife, Bang wipes the blood from his face and continues to fight with confidence. He compliments Jay, saying he's doing well in hand-to-hand combat. With his eyes glowing with anger, Bang declares that now he's going to fight for real. He lands a devastating punch that sends Jay flying to the other side of the warehouse. Jay gets up with difficulty and admits that this guy's strength is no joke. Without giving him time to recover, Bang advances with another powerful punch. He taunts him, telling Jay to keep blocking the blows if he can take it. Baekjum Tae watches the fight and thinks it's the first time he's seen Manager Bang like that. Jay blocks the attacks and thinks that despite having incredible power, his opponent is very reckless. He finds the change in Bang's fighting style strange and wonders if he got annoyed by a single blow. Jay concludes that he's not as impressive as he thought for losing his composure so easily. The two continue to trade blows, and the fight becomes increasingly brutal. Bang's eyes glow with an intense red light as he prepares his next attack. He lands a hard blow to Jay's body, who feels the impact of the punch. Jay spits out a bit of blood and is surprised by the unexpected body shot. Bang takes advantage of the opening and lands a powerful punch to Jay's face. The blow knocks him to the ground, and he lies there, bloody and motionless. The manager approaches Jay and says the people first think according to what they see, but then they end up seeing according to what they think. Baek realizes that Bang thinks Jay fought recklessly on purpose to lower his guard. The manager then turns to Baek and says he remembered he was there. He threatens him, saying he'll have to hold him responsible for bringing someone like Jay. Bang approaches and tells Baek to put the knife away as he's had enough fun with it. Completely terrified, Baekjum Tae curses under his breath, not knowing what to do. Suddenly, the manager's eyes widen in surprise and shock. The reflection in his glasses shows the image of Baek with glowing eyes. However, the one who attacks him is Jay, who suddenly gets up with a powerful kick. The blow lands squarely and knocks him out instantly, ending the fight. Jay approaches back and holds out his hand, asking for the knife back. Baek hands the knife to Jay, who says he hasn't had enough fun with it yet. He then walks towards the fallen manager with the knife in hand. With a quick, precise movement, he expertly twirls the knife in his hand. He stabs Bang several times in the body, waking him up with intense pain. The manager screams in pain from the wounds of the knife blows. Jay explains that he avoided the vital organs, but he'll perish from blood loss if he doesn't go to the hospital. He then raises the bloody knife once more, ready to strike. With the knife at Bang's neck, he warns him not to try to follow them. The manager replies that even if he doesn't follow them, his company will hunt them to the end. Baekjum Tae gets scared when he hears Bang refer to them as a group. He becomes desperate, wondering what he's going to do now that he's involved. Night falls over the warehouses, and silence returns to the place. Jay approaches Bak and tells them to go get something to eat, leaving him confused. He then says he needs a ride, which leaves Bak even more confused. Jay then shows up with his electric scooter and gives Bak a ride. On the way, Jay wonders what he should eat that night. He decides to stop at a 24-hour fast food joint to grab a bite. Inside the diner, the two eat burgers in an awkward silence. Jay notices that Bak isn't eating, and he replies that he will. Bak asks what Jay plans to do, and he responds by asking if he hasn't said it several times already. Jay declares that he will take over Seogwang and any other organization to make their company the best in the underworld. Bak asks if he's serious, or if there's some kind of self-help book. Images of Jay's intense fight in the warehouse flash through Bak's mind. He admits that Jay is strong but says that's not enough for what he wants to do. Bak explains that being strong and building a strong company are two completely different things. Jay looks at him and says he's run a business before, so he knows that very well. Bak reminds Jay that he was kidnapped at his front door and that it would be dangerous to go back there. Jay invites him to sleep at his apartment, saying a hotel would be a waste of money. The scene changes to Jay's apartment with the window light on. As he dries his hair, Bak Tae wonders why he's doing this. Meanwhile, Jay is on his phone and complains about getting involved with a guy like Bak. Bak warns Jay that someone is coming, and he asks who it is. Jay reveals that his business partner is coming, and Bak is surprised that there's another person like him. On a crowded train, a person listens to music on their headphones. The scene focuses on a young woman who is in the middle of the crowded train car. The woman gets off the train and thinks that she wants to quit that job. She arrives at a building and presses the elevator button to go up. Jay's neighbor, who was watching him before, gets into the same elevator as the other woman. She watches her out of the corner of her eye as the elevator door closes. The neighbor wonders who this beautiful woman is, and if she lives in the building. She is surprised to see that the woman pressed the button for the 3rd floor. Jay's neighbor questions if that's the same floor she lives on. The elevator door opens on the 3rd floor, and the two women get out. She is shocked to see that the woman is knocking on Jay's apartment door. The neighbor remembers the conversation about Johnny and realizes that she wasn't the only one surprised to see him. Jay opens the door and the woman enters, saying she brought beer for them. She comments that she really likes the variety of beers in Korea's convenience stores. Bak Tae looks at the woman and thinks that she's very beautiful. Johnny in Summy's body smiles as he takes a sip of his beer. He opens another can and invites everyone to talk while they drink. Jay comments that in the end, she bought the beer she used to drink in America. Johnny introduces himself to Bak as Somi, and he realizes she's Korean-American. With a flushed face, Bak asks what the relationship is between the two of them and if they're a couple. Jay and Johnny are surprised by the question and start laughing at the idea. Johnny says it was incredibly difficult to become friends with Jay, let alone a couple. He explains that they are just colleagues who do the same job, and Jay hits him on the head. Johnny then asks Jay why he brought Bak to the apartment. Jay explains that Bak's house and office are no longer safe for him to stay in. Johnny then assures them that they don't need to worry about money because his new father is very rich. Bak is intrigued and finds the conversation about the rich father a bit strange. Jay tells Johnny that if that's the case, he can find a new office for them. After drinking, Jay says it's time to clean up and go to sleep. Bak offers the bed to Jay, saying he's still a guest in his house. Jay tells Johnny to go home, and Bak is confused by his kindness for everything that's happened. He thinks that he really can't understand what's going on in Jay's head. Johnny says he's lazy and will sleep there, lying down next to Bak. He complains that Jay made him sleep on the floor last time, and that now he's going to sleep in the bed. The bedroom light goes out, and the three of them prepare to sleep in the small space. Bak Tae tries to sleep, but feels uncomfortable with Johnny next to him. He looks to the side and sees Johnny sleeping peacefully in the bed. Baked Joom, Tae turns over in bed and thinks there's no way he can sleep like this. The camera shows the scene of the room with the three of them sleeping in cramped, makeshift spaces. Unable to sleep, Bake gets up, frustrated with the situation he's gotten himself into. He goes to the kitchen and drinks some water to try to calm down. With a thoughtful look, he wipes his mouth and stares into the darkness of the apartment. He looks at Jae, who is sleeping peacefully on the floor without a care in the world. Bak then gets the idea to take Jae out and bring his head to Seogwang to be forgiven. He grabs his clothes and searches for something inside his pockets. With Jae's knife in hand, he thinks that he can't be finished because of some crazy guy's mess. He approaches Jae, ready to attack him, but hesitates at the last second. The memory of Jae's voice on the phone, saying he was on his way, stops him. He also remembers Jae saying he came to save his employee. Angry with himself, he wonders why these memories are coming to his mind now. Bak gives up on the idea and puts the knife back in his bag, determined to forget it. He goes back to bed and decides he'll just go with the flow and run away when he gets a chance. With his eyes closed, he thinks he'll deal with the rest when the time is right. Bake finally manages to sleep and starts snoring loudly in the quiet room. Johnny in Sami's body opens his eyes and stares at him with a bored expression. Jae, who was lying on the floor, is also awake and thoughtful about the situation. The scene changes to a hospital at night, showing the building's facade. Inside a room, Bang Man, Jae is sitting on his bed with a vacant look. He stares into space as he remembers a conversation he had earlier. Manager Choi Chol, Hyan from Seogwang, visited him and said that Platinum Finance's revenue wasn't impressive. Bang asked if his report reached the superiors, and Choi confirmed that it did. Choi explained that Bak's company contributed almost nothing to Seogwang, and so the conclusion was that they should drop the case, which shocked Bang. The manager explained that even if they could catch Jae, the profit wouldn't be worth it. Bang got angry, but Choi reminded him that Seogwang is a company and needs to make a profit. He yelled that his men were injured, but Choi didn't care about that. The Seogwang manager just sighed at Bang's emotional reaction. Choi said that in the old days, the entire organization would have sought revenge without thinking about the losses. But he questioned him, saying that this mentality was too old-fashioned for today's world, and that, in any case, the company's decision was to close the case right there. Bang realized the decision wasn't the company's but Director Cho's, his rival. He remembered that Choi was brought in by Director Cho from an accounting firm. Bang wondered why the company was filling up with people like that, or if he was the one who no longer fit in. He remembered Choi's words and began to think that maybe he was indeed old-fashioned. But then the memory of Jae rescuing him came back to his mind with force. Bang thought that it had been a long time since he had seen someone act so old-fashioned. The scene changes to Jae's apartment, with sunlight streaming through the window. Jae wakes up and realizes it's already morning and that he needs to get up. He looks at the bed and sees Bak and Johnny sleeping peacefully, hugging each other. With a smile on his face, Jae approaches and pokes Bak to wake him up. Bake wakes up with a start and screams when he realizes he was hugging Johnny. The noise wakes up Johnny, who complains about the noise and sits up in bed, sleepy. Jae says that since everyone is awake, they should go get breakfast. Bak is curious and wonders what Jae will choose for them to eat. The scene cuts to the facade of the fast food joint they went to the night before. 3 of them eat burgers, and Bake wonders if those 2 are American. Suddenly, Bak's phone starts to ring, and the name, Driver Kim, appears on the screen. Johnny answers the phone and tells the person to send the address and come there. He explains to Jae that it was his private driver, and that he also took him home the night before. Bak is impressed to learn that Johnny has a private driver like important people do. Johnny says his father was worried because she didn't come home and sent him to pick her up. Bake eats his food and wonders if that girl is really living like the youngest daughter of a rich family. He concludes that although she's pretty, she seems a bit crazy. Johnny announces that the driver has arrived and Bake prepares to see who it is. He is shocked to see a luxury car pulling up in front of the fast food joint. Jae says goodbye, saying he's gonna look for an office and will contact them. Johnny waves to Jae and wishes the 2 of them a good time together. Bake watches the driver open the door for Johnny to get into the car elegantly. He starts to wonder if she really is the youngest daughter of a chaebol family. Suddenly, his phone rings, and an unknown number appears on the screen. He answers the call without knowing who could be calling him. On the other end of the line, G introduces himself, and Baek is surprised. The Seogwon manager asks if he is with Jin Jaehyun at that moment. Baek confirms that he is, and the number for Platinum Finance appears on his phone screen. Baek then says he will meet them, and that it has to be right now. Johnny's luxury car drives through the city towards its destination. He asks the driver if they are going home after the call. The driver replies that the chairman went to work and asked her to come to the company. Johnny wonders how big his new father's company is. Upon arrival, he is impressed by the size of the imposing corporate building. He wonders if this is really Somi's family company. The car stops at the building's entrance, and the driver opens the door for him to get out. A man greets him and introduces himself as a direct employee of his older brother. Johnny thinks with disdain about that annoying guy who tried to have her taken out. The man offers to accompany him to the chairman's office, and Johnny questions the reason. He explains that since she doesn't usually come to the company, her brother was worried she might get lost. Johnny realizes that his brother is worried about his visit and sent him to watch him. He coldly dismisses him, telling him to just go away, leaving the man confused. Johnny says he already has someone to guide him and asks his driver if he knows the way. The brother's employee tries to interject, but is reprimanded for his behavior. Johnny stares at him and asks what he thinks he's doing there. With his eyes glowing, he threatens him for talking to his driver that way. He reminds him that such behavior disrespects not only the driver but him as well. Johnny dismisses him again, saying they can find the office on their own. The man insists that he should go with them, but Johnny looks at him suspiciously. He accuses him of being sent by his brother to spy on his conversation with the chairman. The man gets nervous and starts thinking of excuses to give Johnny. Johnny says that's not going to happen and tells him to stop with his dirty tricks. The employee stands outside the building, watching the car drive away. Inside the building, Johnny and his driver walk through the company's hallways. The employees whisper about the presence of the chairman's youngest daughter there. The camera focuses on the elevator ceiling as they go up to the office. The driver comments that Miss has changed a lot since the last time he saw her. Johnny asks if that's so and thinks it's obvious because he's literally another person. In Director Han Ju-seok's office, his employee reports what happened at the entrance. He says he felt as if Somi had become a completely different person. Somi's brother adjusts his glasses and thinks that she's been acting insane since that day. Somi's brother wonders if she found out he tried to have her taken out, but decides to focus on finishing the job. He asks his employee about a new contractor because the last one was an amateur who worked alone. The man reveals that he made a connection with one of the two largest underworld organizations, leaving his boss surprised. He explains that in exchange for completing the job, they will receive a large construction contract from the company. Somi's brother agrees with the plan and tells his employee to proceed with the deal. His subordinate asks for the company's name, and he reveals that it's Seogwon. The man becomes thoughtful at the name of the organization they just hired. Back at the fast food joint, Baekjum, Tae is surprised that Bang Man, Jai from Seogwon, wants to meet them. He explains to Jae that he doesn't know the reason, but the manager contacted him suddenly. Jae thinks it's safer for them to meet there than to go to Seogwon's territory. He carefully analyzes the situation before making a decision about the meeting. Jae knows that Bang could bring reinforcements, but in a public place, they would have limitations. Jae then tells Bak to call the manager and tell him to come to the fast food joint. He says he's curious about what Bang wants and isn't worried because he's still injured. Bak says he's scared, but Jae tells him to send the address anyway. A while later, a wrapped burger is on the tray on the table. Manager Bang finally arrives and sits down at the table with Jae and Baekjum Tae. With a bandage on his forehead, he stares at them with an expression of pure rage. He wonders what the heck kind of situation he's gotten himself into. Jae offers him the burger, saying he needs protein to recover from his injuries. The manager takes the burger and notices that it's quite heavy. Without hesitation, he takes a big bite of the snack that Jae bought for him. Baek watches the scene and is surprised by how how cleanly the manager eats. After finishing everything, the crumpled burger wrapper is left on the tray. Bang comments that the burger really had a lot of meat and little sauce, which was good. Jay asks why he came, but Bang says he came to hear what Jay has to say. The manager then questions him about his plans and if he's really going to fight against Seogwang. Baek whispers to Jay, saying he'd better tell him what he plans to do soon. He then reveals to Bang that Jay's goal is to dominate the underworld and that he is his boss. Upon hearing that, Manager Bang starts to give a small smirk. Suddenly, he starts laughing loudly at Baekjum, Tae's bold declaration. Bang says the idea sounds ridiculous, but that somehow it makes sense to him. He then surprises everyone by asking if they need more people for the new company. Jay replies that the more, the better, as they have big plans ahead. Manager Bang then declares that he would like to join Jay's company, leaving back in shock. Manager Bang surprises everyone and says he wants to join Jay's new company too. Jay asks about his current company, and Bang says that changing jobs is no big deal. Jay finds the change weird since Bang said the company would hunt him to the ends of the earth. Manager Bang comments that Jay is a good listener, which he didn't expect. Bang says he believed in the company, but the organization itself said something that made him change his mind. He reveals that Bak's company contributes very little to Seogwang, which leaves Baek shocked, and that it would be a bigger loss to hunt them down. So Seogwang decided to just let them go. Baek realizes Seogwang won't come after him anymore, and that he can just run away from Jay now. Jay understands why he wants to leave, but asks why he wants to join their company. Bang explains that he saw Jay save Bak, so he thinks Jay wouldn't betray him either. Jay thanks him and says it would be great to have someone with his skills on the team. He explains that they don't have an office yet and asks Bang to wait, which he agrees to. With a handshake, the two seal the deal for the future of the new company. Manager Bang says goodbye, saying the burger was good and that he'll see them later. Baek and Jay leave the diner and start walking down the street together. Baek reflects that they fought to take each other out, and now they're suddenly working together. He worries that if Manager Bang joins, he'll have another boss above him. He shakes his head and dismisses the idea, since he plans to run away anyway. But he decides to ask anyway and questions Jay if Bang will be his new boss. Jay explains that Baek joined first and was a boss, while Bang is just a manager, so of course Baek will be in a higher position, and the man seems to understand. Baek imagines himself being greeted respectfully by Manager Bang as his new boss. He then thinks that maybe this situation isn't so bad after all. The scene changes, and Somi's father scolds her for not calling after spending the night out. Johnny apologizes, saying she was talking with a friend and it got late. Her father asks what they were talking about, and Johnny reveals that the friend is her business partner. Surprised, her father asks if she's starting a business, and Johnny confirms her intention. She asks her father for help getting an office, since they don't have any money yet. Her father is very happy with his daughter's initiative and agrees to help right away. He then asks what kind of business she's planning, and Johnny is at a loss for words. He thinks about his real plan to take over the underworld and dismantle the largest organization in America. Unable to tell the truth, she says it's an IT business, and her father seems interested. Johnny thinks he needs to choose a field his father's company isn't involved in at all. She says she's going to create video games, and her father regrets it's not one of the company's fields. Johnny gets nervous because doesn't play video games and only said that to get out of the situation. Her father offers some startup funding, and Johnny is surprised since she only wanted an office. He thinks that money is good, but receiving an investment is a whole different story. He knows her father is overprotective, wouldn't pressure her to pay back the money or make a profit. But for their plan, taking outside investment doesn't make sense. Even though they need money, her father understands and says it won't be an investment, but rather an allowance. And Johnny thanks him. Her father is happy that she knows money is a serious thing and believes she won't fail. However, he adjusts his glasses and says that in exchange for the money, there's one condition. He says he knows it sounds old-fashioned, but he doesn't like that young IT people don't wear suits. He explains that suits are like armor for businessmen on the battlefield. Johnny finds that an old-fashioned idea and thinks about the American billionaires in hoodies. Her father guesses his thought and says that even the rich wore suits when they were starting out. Now they dress however they want as a show of power for having built their kingdoms. So he demands that as long as she's spending his money, she must wear the proper armor. Johnny remembers that he also wore suits in his past life and agrees with the idea. To get the office, her father says she should ask her older sister, which surprises her. Father decides not to wait and calls his other daughter, Jeokyeong, asking her to come to his office. Leaves from a plant fall slowly onto the desk, creating a small scene transition. The older sister, Jeokyeong, arrives and greets Sami excitedly, asking when she got there. Johnny replies that he was going to look for her and thinks about the tricks his brother tried to use against him. The father then asks Jeokyeong if she has a vacant office in her largest building in Gangnam. She confirms that she does, and Johnny is surprised to realize his new sister owns several buildings. Her father asks her to give the office to Salmi, and Johnny repeats that she's going to make video games. Her sister is surprised she likes games, but says of course they should help her. The father then asks Jeokyeong to keep an eye on Somi's new company often. He tells her to check if the employees are dressed well and if the game is being made. Johnny realizes his new sister is going to be watching him, and she encourages him excitedly. He looks at the company building and thinks that the situation has gotten much more complicated. Outside, Johnny calls Jay and asks if he can talk at the moment. She tells him she got an office and even money for the business, making Jay excited. She reveals that to do so, she had to say they were going to create video games, leaving Jay shocked. Jay questions her, saying he doesn't even play video games, and Johnny agrees that's the problem. Johnny says that's why they need to find someone to make the games immediately. Jay gets desperate and asks where they're going to find a game developer out of the blue. Johnny explains that's what happened, but they need the money, and Jay agrees. Jay says they'll talk about it later when they meet in person and hangs up. He hangs up the phone and sighs, wondering what on earth is happening now. Jay then turns to Bak and says he's leaving, making the man curious. Bak says that since Seogwong isn't coming after them anymore, he can go back home now. Jay agrees with his logic and says he'll get in touch later then. Bak agrees but thinks to himself that they're done and will never see each other again. He decides to go back to the office first and hails a cab, feeling like everything is back to normal. Inside the taxi, he thinks with relief that things are finally getting back to normal. The taxi arrives at its destination, and Bake happily thinks his company is back in business. But as he gets out of the car, he is completely shocked by the scene he finds. He sees his office completely destroyed and burned and yells, asking what happened. Bake enters the rebel and curses Seogwong for setting his office on fire. He notices the safe is intact and calms down, remembering he stored everything valuable elsewhere. Even so, he is devastated to see his company reduced to ashes. He tries to calm down and decides to call his employees to let them know what happened. But his employee surprises him, saying he can't come back to the company anymore. Bike keeps calling the others, but they all give the same answer and apologize. One by one, they say they can't come back and hang up the phone on him. He begs his last employee not to hang up the phone and to wait a bit. Desperate, Bak asks them to at least explain why they are all doing this. The man then reveals that Seogwong recruited all of them to work at their headquarters. He explains that the organization convinced them not to work for Bak anymore. Bake understands that Seogwong wasn't going to take him out, but rather drive his company into bankruptcy. The employee says it's hard to do business without Seogwong, and that it would be the same in another territory. He then says goodbye and advises Bak to find something else to do as well. The call ends and Bak stands amidst the wreckage, completely devastated. At dusk, the image of the burned building shows the desolation of the place. Sitting on the ground, Bake thinks that what hurts the most is that everyone abandoned him. Suddenly, his cell phone rings, and the name Jin Jian appears on the screen, surprising him. He answers, and on the other side, Jay asks where he is and invites him to dinner. Bake looks at the ground and thinks that this guy must not have many friends either. Bak asks if they're going to eat burgers lingers again, but Jay suggests they grab a beer. They enter a small, traditional bar to drink and talk a bit about the situation. Bake takes a big gulp of his beer to try and relax after the stressful day he's had. He lets out a sigh of relief and enjoys the moment to unwind and forget his problems. Bake then eats a meat skewer to go with his cold beer. With his mouth full, he sighs again, still thinking about everything that happened that day. Meanwhile, janks his beer and thinks that if it weren't for this guy, none of this would have happened. Bake wonders if it's really Jay's fault that employees laughed and concludes that it is. Jay notices he's deep in thought and asks what's wrong, calling him boss. Bake says that the company Jay acquired no longer exists and that he's sorry about that. He explains that when he said he was going home, he actually went to the office and found it burned down. Bake also reveals that all of his employees left, tempted by Xiaoguang. Jay interrupts him and says it's not true, that there's nothing left, because he still has him, and that's enough. The two fall silent for a moment after Jay's unexpected words. Bake gets embarrassed and asks what Jay meant by that, leaving him confused. He says they barely know each other and remembers how he was beaten up by Jay in the warehouse. The memory of the beating he took from Jay flashes through his mind, leaving him even more confused. He also remembers the moment Jay said he was going to take over his company. He thinks that Jay stole his company, then saved him, and is now saying things like this. He then sincerely thanks Jay for the supportive words he said to him. Even so, he questions if they are really close enough for that kind of conversation. Jay explains that in his previous life, he thought life should be lived alone, and that he always pushed away people who tried to get close to him, which is why he has no friends. But he remembers Johnny, who ended up being the only person close to a friend he ever had. He explains that Johnny wasn't really his friend, but always acted like one, and that's the only kind of relationship he knows, and he wants them to become close, like that. Bake thinks that Jay wants him to be the kind of person who would save him even if it was dangerous, and who would say everything is okay even after he lost everything he had. He thinks that if he heard that at any other time, he would find it a cheesy and meaningless line, but after losing so many people that day, Jay's words hit him differently. He then asks if he can call him bro, but Jay tells him to keep calling him boss. Bake agrees and excitedly proposes that they become as close as Jay suggested. Jay smiles at Bake's excitement and agrees with the idea. They toast with their beers to seal the new agreement between them at the bar. Bake then asks about the earlier phone conversation about a game. Jay explains that Somi's father will fund the company, but for that, they need to create a game. Bake is shocked and wonders where they're going to find someone to create a game out of nowhere. He then says that he actually thinks he can find someone and that he knows the perfect guy. The scene shifts to a large corporate building with the letters SG on the facade. Inside the building, a man in a suit walks hastily through the corridors. Manager Bang Man G walks purposefully towards his destination in the company. A smiling man greets him and asks what brings him there. The man is director Jo Young Jiu, the real power behind Xiaoguang. The memory of Choi questioning his old-fashioned mentality flashes through Bang's mind. Director Joe is the only one with the power to make decisions like that, and has the chairman's support. In the director's office, Bang places an envelope on the table with determination. Joe is surprised to see the resignation letter, and Bang says it's what he wanted after all. The director smiles and says there's a misunderstanding, and that he never wanted Bang to leave. He praises Bang for his role in founding Xiaoguang and remembers his old nickname. Bang replies that since the building is already constructed, there's no longer a need for a bulldozer. With a serious look, Bang adds that the only time they would won is for demolition. Director Joe asks why he's leaving and if he's going over to the rival group's side. Bang remembers how many men from the rival group he defeated and that they would never accept him. He says Joe knows that and that he was the one who clipped his wings, so he doesn't need to worry. Bang then accuses him of getting rid of his old boss, Director Jang, to take his place. Director Joe denies the accusation and says Jang's passing was an accident and that he left on his own. Bang calls him shameless and asks if he practices that innocent face in the mirror. Tired of the word games, Bang turns to leave, but the director calls him back. Angrily, he punches the table, breaking the wood with the force of the impact. Director to Joe sighs and thinks he didn't expect Bang to actually leave if he pushed him. Looking at the resignation letter, he wonders what Bang is planning to do. Outside the company building, Bang walks around the area with his hands in his pockets. In the hallway, he runs into Choi, who is surprised that he's already out of the hospital. Choi smiles and says the company's decision was final, and that talking to the director wouldn't change anything. He taunts him, saying he doesn't know how things were in his gangster days. Furious, Bang lunges towards Choi, who continues to provoke him with a smile. Choi is startled by the speed and intensity of Bang as he approaches him with a swift movement. Bang prepares to attack Choi, who has no time to react. He lands a powerful kick to Choi's chin, sending him flying backward from the impact. The man hits the floor hard and is completely stunned by the blow he took. Lying on the ground, Choi yells at Bang and asks what he thinks he's doing. Bang slowly approaches Choi, who tries to get up with difficulty. With a hard slap, Bang throws Choi against the wall, who screams in pain from the attack. He approaches the fallen Choi and glares at him with eyes glowing with pure rage. Choi threatens him, saying he's going to report him to management for his violent behavior. Bang gets closer and says he can imagine meeting a guy who acts like a gangster outside the company. With a cold look, he declares to Choi that he has resigned from the company. Bang says that if he's part of the company's power faction, that has nothing to do with him anymore. He threatens him to never talk to him that way again. Bang then turns and walks away, telling him to never show his face in front of him again. And if he does, he coldly warns him that he'll just take him out without hesitation. The scene changes to a bustling city street in front of a commercial building. Johnny asks Beck how he knows someone who can make games for them. Beck explains he was just someone who owed him money from loan sharking and nothing more. He says they used to work at a big game company, but left to start their own studio. They were betrayed by an employee and went bankrupt, even after borrowing money from loan sharks. Johnny is interested in the story and asks Beck to sell the person's debt to her. Beck is surprised by her calmness, but agrees and says he'll trust the boss and follow her. Jay asks how Bay convinced him so quickly, and he says it was with effort. Johnny then asks what Jay plans to do with the debt after buying it. A while later, they meet the developer, Lee Min Sang, who is shocked by the proposal. Min Sang asks if this is some kind of hidden camera prank. Bake says he understands the surprise, but assures him the offer is completely serious. Johnny explains that they will pay an average salary during the game's development, and most importantly, the principal debt will be cleared once the game is completed. She warns that if the game is made carelessly, that won't happen, and Min Sang gets offended. Min Sang firmly guarantees that he would never make a game carelessly, not even once. Jay watches him in silence and is satisfied with the developer's determination. He then asks what the concept of the game they want him to make is. Jay surprises Min Sang by telling him to make the game he always wanted to make. Jay confirms that this is their concept, and Min Sang promises to finish the game properly. He bows and thanks Jay for giving him a new chance to achieve his dream. Johnny watches Jay with admiration and wonders if he's really trying. She then questions if he was always this kind of person, and she just never noticed. Min Sang asks where he should go to work, and Johnny invites him to see the new office. The developer is a bit hesitant about the invitation, but agrees to go with them as they walk down the street. Sang thinks that he's still suspicious of their offer. He thinks the proposal is exactly what he's always dreamed of and seems too good to be true. He remembers the saying to be careful of those who say exactly what you want to hear, and that they were brought in by a loan shark. So this could all be a scam to get more money out of him. Johnny stops in front of a tall, modern building and announces that they've arrived. Min Sang looks up and is completely shocked by the size of the building. He can't believe their office in such a fancy building in the middle of Gangnam. Johnny invites them inside, and Min Sang follows the group, still a bit suspicious. Upon entering, he finds a huge, luxurious, and fully furnished office. Johnny asks if the space is enough, and Min Sang says it's more than enough and very nice. Jay explains that they bought everything from the previous tenant, who moved to their own building. Baek stands up and says he's going to the restroom quickly to relieve himself. Min Sang follows him hastily, saying he needs to use the restroom too. The scene focuses on the men's restroom sign, showing where the two men are headed. Inside the restroom, Baek comments that he drank a lot of coffee, which is why he needs to go. He asks if Min Sang is really going to close his old business, and he confirms that he is. Min Sang then asks Baek if this whole thing isn't some kind of scam. He says that from his point of view, the situation seems unbelievable and very suspicious. Baek smiles and says he knows better than anyone that he has nothing, so what kind of scam could he pull? He teases him, saying that if he had anything to take, he would have done it a long time ago. Min Sang awkwardly agrees with Baek's logic about the situation. Baek admits the situation is unbelievable, but tells him to get used to it if he's going to work with them. Outside, Johnny asks Jay if he's really okay with all of this. Jay explains that Min Sang can't do everything alone, and that hiring more people will cost a lot. Johnny says that in exchange for putting on that show for her father, she got them billions. And besides the money, they also got this office for free. Jay comments that her new father must really like her a lot, and Johnny agrees that it seems so. He admits he could just live as a rich daughter, but he can't forget his revenge. Jay smiles and thanks Johnny for not running away and giving up on their plan. He then says that now that the office is ready, it's time to make an important call. In a meeting room, a man laughs upon learning that Choi got beat up by Bang Man. Choi asks director Joe if it's right to leave Bang alone after everything that happened. The director says Bang resigned, and that he can't do anything unless Choi wants him to cut off his fingers. Choi gets angry and says Bang is the one acting like a gangster, and that he might do something crazy. The director then gets tired of the conversation and asks what Choi wants him to do. Choi suggests it would be better to remove any future problems Bang might cause. Director Joe smiles and says it seems Choi has also become a thug like Bang. He explains that Bang isn't someone you can handle with average skills. Joe reminds him that they dropped the Platinum Finance case, so they wouldn't lose money, and that if they failed to capture Bang and only get hurt, their reputation would be tarnished. Choi reveals that Bang threatened to end him if he saw him again, and the director laughs at the situation. After thinking for a bit, Joe says it seems there is a way to solve the problem. In a basement at Xiaoguang headquarters, Bak's former employees are gathered. They complain about being locked in there, and one of them says something is very wrong. One of them says to wait because Xiaoguang promised to give them tasks soon. In the hallway, Choi walks towards the basement where the men are waiting. Director Joe thinks that if they capture Bang, great, but if they get defeated, that's fine too. He sees them as people he would get rid of anyway, and opens the door to the room. Choi enters and says they have received a very important task to complete. He throws a folder on the table, and the men are shocked when they see its contents. A while later, he instructs them to complete the job by the end of the day and report back to him. The door closes, and the men are left alone to discuss the new task. One of them opens the folder and is surprised by the information he finds inside. They discover that their new target is Manager Bang Man, Ji from Xiaoguang. One of the men is shocked to learn it's the same Manager Baek was so afraid of. Another gets desperate and asks how they can possibly capture someone so strong, but one of them says they need to do this to maybe climb the ranks. They agree they can't stay in the basement forever and decide to take down Manager Bang. The scene shifts to an apartment building at night with a few lights on. Inside an apartment, Manager Bang is relaxing on his couch, watching television. He laughs out loud at a show about a politician who cared for and worried about the people. The sudden laughter makes his whole body ache, and he realizes he pushed himself too hard. Suddenly, his cell phone starts ringing, breaking the silence of the apartment. He answers the call and says he's resting at home because he needs time to recover. Bang invites the person to come to his place and says he'll send the address. He opens the fridge and thinks about going to buy some beers to serve his guest. As he leaves his house, he reflects on the politician who took care of his people and finds the idea interesting. Hiding in a car, the men from Sogwong watch him leave and prepare for the attack. A group of men armed with knives gets out of the car and approaches Bang. Bang walks into a convenience store to calmly buy his beers. Outside, the group's leader says a direct fight won't work and comes up with a plan. He says one of them will ambush him first, so they can all attack him at the same time. The group leader asks who will do the ambush, and everyone stays silent. With no volunteers, the group leader decides he will make the first attack himself. Inside the store, Bang takes advantage of a sale and decides to buy 4 cans of beer. Leaving the store, he carries the heavy bags and heads back to his apartment. Hiding in an alley, the group leader watches him approach and prepares to attack. With a knife in hand, he runs towards Bang to surprise him from behind. However, Bang notices the attack at the last second and turns to defend himself. With a quick move, he dodges the stab and lands a blow on the attacker. The impact knocks him to the ground, and the knife flies out of his hand, landing far away. The man falls to the ground, defeated, and Bang faces him with the knife in hand. He approaches the fallen man and wonders who the heck he is. With the knife in his hand, Bang looks around, searching for more attackers. He then realizes he's not alone, and that there are more people waiting for him. The rest of the group appears, and one of them asks if Bang is with the fallen man. They wonder what they should do, and if they should just attack him. One of the men decides to attack and runs towards Bang with his knife in hand. The reflection in Bang's glasses shows the men approaching for the confrontation. With impressive agility, he dodges and attacks the men with the knife. 2 of the attackers cry out in pain as they are hit by Bang's strikes. The last man standing is hit by a powerful punch to the face. With a well-aimed kick, Bang knocks him to the ground, ending the fight. He turns to the fallen man and asks who they are and who sent them. One of the men wonders if Bang got weaker because of the injuries from his fight with Jay. Suddenly, one of the men screams in pain as he's hit by a surprise attack. Bang feels his wound open up again and realizes he pushed his body too hard. One of the men takes advantage of the opening and attacks him from behind with a knife. He feels the blow and thinks that normally he would never let an attack like that get past him. Seeing that Bang is bleeding, the group leader shouts for everyone to attack him at once. The other 2 men advance with their knives for the final attack against Bang. Even wounded, Bang prepares for the confrontation with the last attackers. He faces them and asks them to wait a second before they continue the fight. The men pause for a moment and wonder what he wants now. Suddenly, Jay appears on his electric scooter and quickly approaches the group. One of the men is shocked to see Jay there again and wonders what he's doing. Jay brakes his scooter sharply right in the middle of the confrontation between the men. Bang asks how he knew where to find him, and Jay says he just followed the address he gave him. Bang agrees and says that if he continues down that street, he'll get to his house. Jay then recognizes the men as Bake's former employees and questions them. The group leader gets desperate seeing Jay and doesn't understand why the 2 are together. He decides his only chance is to land a clean hit on one of them and moves in to attack. With a quick move, he tries to strike one of the 2 men on the street, but Jay intercepts him with a powerful blow and easily knocks him to the ground. Jay turns to the other 2 and glares at them with a menacing expression. With his eyes glowing, he tells the men to grab their buddies and leave. The men agree and flee the scene in a hurry, afraid of Jay. A while later, in Bang's apartment, he puts a teddy bear bandage on his face. Jay watches him and asks if that was the only bandage they had at the store. He thanks Jay for his help and asks why he came there in the first place. Jay explains that he came to make the job offer they discussed earlier official. He extends his hand and invites Bang to work together at the new company. Bang shakes Jay's hand and accepts the offer to join them. He then starts telling Jay about his situation within Siagwang. Bang explains that his original organization was pushed out due to internal politics, and that he was the only one left, but now the company has shown its true colors. He then reveals that Siagwang and Dongsan used to be a single organization. Bang says that a long time ago, one man conquered the entire Seal underworld by himself. He explains that the man unified all the organizations, built a true empire. but that he had no talent for governing and ended up being betrayed by his subordinates. Jay finds the story interesting, and Bang asks if this doesn't discourage him from his plan. Jay replies that if someone has done it before, it gives him confidence that he can too. Bang laughs and reminds Jay that in the end, the empire crumbled after the conquest. Jay then calmly replies that in that case, he simply won't stop conquering. Bang is shocked by Jay's response and starts to think that maybe he's not just a dreamer. As Jay drinks his beer, Bang thinks that maybe this guy can actually pull it off. The scene shifts to the Siadwong building, where Choi is yelling at his men. He reprimands them with a punch to the table, furious about the mission's failure. Choi yells at them for 5 of them getting hurt and still not catching Bang. He calls them weak and pathetic, and one of the men gets angry at the insult. They think Bang is nothing special and that they only held back for fear of Director Joe. One of them complains that Choi isn't a real gangster and shouldn't treat them like that. Choi then starts to worry if Bang found out that he was the one who sent the men. He turns to the men and asks if they said someone sent them. One of the men stays silent for a moment before answering Choi's question. Outside Bang's house, the 2 remaining henchmen are stopped by Jay and Bang himself. Jay asks if they were sent by manager Choi, and one of the men confirms the information. The man quickly corrects himself and says that actually, they didn't say that. He explains they didn't say they were sent by someone, but answered when he asked. Choi berates them for wasting the chance to move up in the company hierarchy. He slams the door hard and leaves them alone in the hallway to think about what they did. Angry, one of the men curses Choi, and the other calms him down, reminding him he's the director's right-hand man. He then asks why the other one didn't mention that Jay showed up to help Bang. The man explains he heard Jay say he's still with Bake and didn't want to get in his way. The other agrees with the decision and wonders what the trio is planning to do. Back in Director Joe's office, he tells Choi not to worry because Bang is like a kite without a string. He reassures him, saying a guy like him couldn't do anything anywhere. Joe wonders why Bang hates Choi so much, and the man says it's an exaggeration to say he could take him out. Choi then offers to serve the director and says he'll do whatever he commands. Director Joe says he has a job for him and reminds him of the request they received from the HK group. Choi confirms that in exchange for winning a development project, they must take someone out. The director opens a folder and shows the photo of the person they need to take out. Choi is shocked to recognize the woman as the 3rd daughter of the HK group's chairman. Director Joe smiles and says, "This is why Cheebles are scarier than gangsters." He orders Choi to pick 2 of his most skilled men and get the job done quickly. Choi takes the folder and leaves the room to carry out the order, but thinks of something. He looks at Somi's photo and wonders if they really need 2 people for the job. In a diner, Johnny tells Jay they need to decide on a name for the company. Jay says he hasn't thought of anything, and Johnny suggests something simple like his name or initials. Jay suggests the initials BB, and Johnny asks what they stand for. Intrigued, with a serious expression, Jay reveals that the company's name will be Bad Business. Johnny complains about the name, and Jay says that what they do isn't exactly good business. She agrees and accepts the name, saying they can come up with a better meaning if someone asks. Jay smiles at the idea, and the company's name, BB Company, is finally decided. The scene shifts to the chairman's office, where Somi's father questions her about the name. Johnny makes up that BB stands for Brave and Bold, and her father likes the meaning. He encourages her to live up to the name, and Johnny promises she will try her best. As she leaves the room, Johnny sighs and complains about how hard it is to make a living. Suddenly, cell phone starts ringing in the pocket of her plaid coat. She answers the call, and on the other end of the line, her driver is waiting. He apologizes and says he came down early to get the car ready for her. The driver then reveals that some washed the car's tires, and it will take a while to fix. Johnny gets suspicious and wonders if someone deliberately slashed the tires. She tells the driver to go home after the repairs and that she'll go on her own. As she leaves the building, she notices someone is following her and that she was right. She sees a man in a cap following her and confirms her suspicions about the sabotage. Johnny knows that damaging the target's car is a basic tactic for a hit, especially when the target has a driver who also acts as a bodyguard. By taking the car out of the picture, they separate the target from the driver, making everything easier. Johnny then grabs a cup of coffee and thinks the situation is perfect for her plans. She enters a coffee shop and asks them to fill her cup with very hot coffee. With the coffee in hand, she leaves the shop and walks down the street, waiting for the right moment. One of the men watches her from a distance and prepares for the surprise attack. The man runs towards her with a sharp object in his hand to attack her, but the man stops suddenly when he realizes Johnny was waiting for him. She turns and offers him the cup she's holding, telling him to have some coffee. Without hesitation, Johnny throws the boiling coffee directly in the attacker's face. The man screams in pain as the hot liquid burns his skin and blinds him. Suddenly, a powerful aura explodes from Johnny. To the man's surprise, with her eyes glowing, she activates her special ability called Bloodbath. The second attacker watches him afar is shocked by the scene and wonders what that is. He then grabs a bag and takes out his own weapon to attack Johnny. Johnny glares at him and tells him to look at the situation and think carefully about what he's about to do. Ignoring the warning, the man rushes towards her with his knife in hand. Johnny just smiles and calls his attitude a brainless move. The scene changes to the office of Executive Director Han Ju-seok, Sami's brother. An assistant enters the room and informs him that Seogwon called and said they would act today. Jo Seok seems pleased with the news and says that's fine with him. He smiles and thinks that he'll finally stop seeing that girl in his house. Back at the fight, the second man tries to attack Johnny with his knife. She easily dodges the blow and quickly moves to his side. The man is surprised by her speed and can't react in time. Johnny lands a powerful punch to his stomach that knocks the wind out of him. With both men on the ground, she wonders if all the country's hitmen are at this level. She wakes one of them up with a kick to the face and tells him it's time to talk. She demands to know which organization he's from and who hired him, but he asks who she is. Johnny says that wasn't a question and steps on his hand to force him to talk. The man screams in pain from the force of Johnny's stomp on his hand. She kneels down, says let's try this again, and orders him to answer. Scared, the man begs her to wait and says he'll tell her everything. He confesses he's from Seogwon, but that he doesn't know who the client is. He explains he was just following company orders, and Johnny repeats the name Seogwon. The scene changes to a large, luxurious mansion at night. Han Ju-seok walks down the hallway of his house, looking tired from work. He's startled to see Johnny waiting for him at the entrance of the house. He stares at her, surprised to find her there at that moment. She asks why he's so scared, as if he's seen someone who shouldn't be there. Ju-seok just lets out a sigh of frustration at the unexpected situation. Meanwhile, director Jo pours himself a drink, annoyed with what happened. He asks manager Choi if what happened makes any sense, and he says no. Jo takes a sip of his drink and agrees that the situation makes no sense. Suddenly, he slams the glass on the table in anger, shattering it on impact. He yells at Choi about the scolding he got from the HK group because of the mission's failure. Director Jo complains that gangsters can't do their job, and Choi apologizes. Jo says now he understands why people hate manager Choi, who is left confused. He questions him for sending idiots, and Choi says they were his best men. The director says that from now on, he will choose the men for the mission himself. The scene changes, and a few days have passed since the incident with Johnny. Jay is seen in an apartment, adjusting his new suit to go out. He looks at himself in the mirror and thinks it's strange to wear a suit again. He remembers that in his past life, he wore a custom-made suit from New York, but now, the suit he's wearing is from a cheap store across from the station. As he leaves the apartment, he comes across a woman opening the door next to his. They both look at the elevator and see that it's under maintenance, and they can't use it. His neighbor wonders why he always wears the same clothes and is suddenly in a suit, but she admits to herself that he actually looks really good like that. She greets him, and Jay replies with a slightly awkward hello as well. The woman asks if he's going to work, and Jay replies that he just started a company. The elevator arrives, and Jay says goodbye by, wishing her a good day before getting in. The woman is left behind in the hallway, completely shocked by the news. The scene changes and shows the sign for the new company of Jay and his friends, BB Company, and the office. Johnny compliments Jay, saying that now he has the right look with the suit. She then hands him a company ID badge and tells him to take good care of it. Bake adjusts his own suit and complains that this style isn't really his thing. Johnny says the suit looks much better on him, and he asks if she really thinks so. Min Sang says it's the first time he's worn a suit to work, and that he understands the company's situation. He looks at his ID badge and notices his title is Development Team Leader. Bach asks what his position is, and Johnny says she'll explain the whole hierarchy. She starts by introducing Jin Jian, who is the new CEO of the company. Next, she introduces herself as Han Somi, the vice CEO of BB Company. She then points to Baek Jum Tae, who is now the executive director, and finally, she introduces Bang Man Gi, who got the position of director. Bak realizes he has a higher position than Bang, and the director politely congratulates him. Bang says this is a company, and Baek laughs, saying they should work hard together. Bang finds it funny that their titles sound like a big company's, but they're nothing yet. Jay asks if Bang has any ideas for the future, and he says he has a plan for the CEO to decide on. Jay then dismisses the development team leader, Min Sang, so he can get to work. In a meeting room, Jay asks director Bang to present his idea. Bang confirms and reveals that their company's first target will be Siagwang. He explains that their headquarters is the hub where the people and money are, and that outside the headquarters there are many small and large organizations in their territory, but he explains that these groups have no loyalty to Siogwang, which only sees them as colonies. Bang asks Bak if he knows this, and the man agrees that he knows it very well. Bang's plan is to use this resentment to take over the organizations under an anti-Sadwang banner. They will form a new organization within their territory to fight against the oppression. Bang believes that when they grow big enough, other organizations will join them, and that when that happens, they will finally have a real organization. Jay claps and says it's a solid plan, leaving Bang pleased with the approval. Johnny asks where they should start, and Bang says he used to handle the external organizations. He says he knows the list by heart and will pick a suitable target, and Johnny likes the idea. Baek thinks they've just started, and director Bang is already taking the lead. He worries that even with a higher title now, the situation could turn around quickly. Meanwhile, Min Sang is at his desk and decides to organize his plans for the game. He seriously wonders what kind of people work at this company. He thinks they aren't people from game companies, and that one of them was a loan shark. Min Sang thinks this isn't a real game company and wonders why they want him there. Suddenly, Johnny appears behind him and asks how things are going, startling him. She tells him not to hesitate to ask for anything, and he says he needs to hire people. He explains that at the moment, he's the only one on the development team. Johnny says they can only hire a few, since their main business isn't games. Min Sang thinks that having his debt forgiven is already too good, and that he shouldn't ask for more, but Johnny says they will offer incentives, double the usual amount, to attract good people. Min Sang asks why they are doing this as if it's not their main business. Johnny thinks that his work will hide what they're really doing. She explains that the company's main business is mergers and acquisitions to grow and profit, but she says that she and the CEO wanted to use the money to do something creative and meaningful. Min Sang gets super motivated and promises to create something that won't disappoint them. Elsewhere, Baek asks Bang when he came up with that plan for the company. Bang explains that he simulated various scenarios as a precaution in case the groups became a threat. He then asks Baek what exactly Johnny does at their company. Baek reveals that she is the youngest daughter of a wealthy family, which is how they got the office. Bang wonders why she's in this world and if she and Jay are dating, which Baek denies. Baek comments that the CEO isn't an easy guy to figure out either, and Bang agrees. He says he's given up on understanding and is just going with the flow, which Bang thinks is a good idea. Suddenly, Bang slams his cup on the table and says the flow is the answer, leaving Back confused. He says he just realized how they should really execute the plan. At another room, Jay asks Johnny if Sagwong sent a hitman after her. Jay asks how it went, and she stands up, saying that as he can see, she's fine. He warns her not to relax, as they probably underestimated her for being a girl. Jay then warns that the next person they send could be much more dangerous. The scene changes to the ocean waves crashing against a concrete breakwater. A man in a suit is fishing peacefully, saying the hotel was suffocating. His bodyguards approach and tell him not to worry about anything. The scene reveals that several bodyguards have been assigned to protect him at the location. On the phone, the man promises he will show up in court the next day to testify. Suddenly, a mysterious figure approaches the bodyguards who are on watch. The two men notice the approach and turn to see who is coming. They see a man with long hair and tell him to turn around and leave. The man stares at them in silence without saying a single word. He then asks why he can't enter if the other man is just fishing there. The security guard tells him to fish somewhere else, and the man agrees that's a good idea. He then turns and throws his bag on the ground with a metallic clang. The bodyguard tells him to move further away, but the man starts to open his bag. To the guard's surprise, he pulls out a huge knife from inside the bag. In the blink of an eye, he lunges at the two men with the knife in hand. With a swift move, he slashes at the two bodyguards' necks. The men fall to the ground as the hitman continues on his way without stopping. The other security guards see the scene and start shooting at the approaching man. The hitman dodges the bullets with impressive agility and keeps running. He then throws knives towards the shooters to neutralize them from a distance. Two of the bodyguards are hit square by the knives and fall, taken down. The last security guard standing is shocked to see his comrades fall. He curses the hitman, but is surprised by a quick and unexpected attack. The hitman lands a powerful kick on the bodyguard, who has no time to react. The man falls to the ground, and his gun slides far out of his reach. The man who was fishing panics and yells for his men to get him. The remaining bodyguards start shooting desperately at the hitman. The man dodges all the shots, and one of the security guards wonders how he's so fast. The hitman then pulls out his own gun and shoots back while running. The last bodyguards are hit and fall from the breakwater into the sea. The target screams in terror and tries to flee the scene desperately, but a single shot echoes, and the man falls to the ground, taken down. The hitman approaches the body and picks up a bottle of whiskey that was there. He looks at the bottle and comments that it's a good bottle of liquor. On the phone, the hitman says the job is done and asks them to handle the cleanup. He asks if there's another job already, and the person on the other end tells him to wait. He then takes out his cell phone and looks at the screen, waiting for information on the next target. He receives a photo of Johnny and comments to himself that she's very pretty. Back at the BB Company office, Jay asks if the idea is to build momentum. Director Bang agrees and confirms that the plan is exactly to build momentum. He explains that he first thought of targeting a large, well-known company, but that taking down several small companies in a short time would have a bigger impact. He believes that when people feel it's a wave, they will join without a fight. Jay asks about the size of the companies, and Bang suggests something the size of Platinum Finance. Black and Jay listen to the plan in silence, seeming to process the information. Johnny asks about the time frame. Bang says he was thinking of 3 companies in 1 month. Jay reflects on Bang's suggestion and seems to have another idea in mind. He then tells them to take down 5 companies in 1 month, which would be pretty fast. Jay changes his mind and says they'll do it in 1 week, leaving Bang shocked. He details that they will start on Monday and finish on Friday. Bang is completely stunned by the speed Jay wants to impose on the plan. Bike is also surprised and asks if he means 1 organization per day. Jay explains that it needs to be fast so that people feel they are unstoppable. Bang asks if they can really do that, and Jay says yes if they work together. Back says he knows the CEO and director Bang are incredibly strong and that he's confident too, but 3 people taking down 5 companies isn't easy. Johnny corrects him and asks why she isn't being counted, Since there are 4 of them, Bike and Bang look at her, completely confused and not understanding at all. Bake asks if she fights too, and Johnny says yes, and that he'll see next week. The meeting ends, and night falls over the company building in Seoul. In the elevator, Jay invites Johnny to dinner, but she says she has a family dinner. The scene changes to the bustling city traffic at night. Inside the car, Johnny thinks about how shocked the men were to learn she knows how to fight. The driver calls her name and says he needs to tell her something important. He apologizes and reveals that her brother has transferred him to another executive. Johnny smiles, realizing her brother is getting ready to take her out. The scene changes and shows her family's mansion at night, with the lights on. In the dining room, the family is gathered for dinner in a tense silence. Her father asks Sumi how she is, and she says business is going well. Her brother Jo-seok smiles dismissively and asks if that can be called a business. He tells her to just play house with their father's money, and she taunts him back. Jo-seok gets annoyed by her comment and asks what she meant by that. She asks her father if his company isn't also all with his money, and he agrees. Johnny then confronts him about her driver, and he says he just transferred him to fill a vacancy. He says a young woman with a private driver looks like a rich girl playing with her father's money. Johnny smiles and asks if he did that out of concern for her on purpose. Jo-seok just tells her to have fun and dismisses her with a wave of his hand. Johnny thinks he can have his fun because he'll be gone by the end of the week. The scene changes, and Jay is seen walking down a street at night with a bag. He stops when he notices something strange happening in front of him on the street. He sees his neighbor being harassed by a man who walked her to her door. The man touches her and insists on having some tea, and she asks him to stop. Jay approaches and asks her if something is wrong and if she's okay. The woman thinks that if she openly asks for help, she doesn't know what the manager will do to her. The manager asks who Jay is and what his relationship with Jisoo is, and he notes her name. Jay replies that he's just a neighbor, and the man tells him to mind his own business and leave. Jay agrees and seems like he's just going to leave the situation behind. But as he walks away, Jisoo asks him to wait, and the man calls him an idiot. Jay stops and turns around with a serious look, asking what he said. He walks back towards the manager, who is surprised by his attitude. Jay asks if he called him an idiot, and if this is any of his business, and the man nervously agrees. With a cold look, Jay tells him to leave if he doesn't want more trouble, and the manager runs off. Jisoo thanks him, but Jay says it only became his business, which is why he stepped in. She asks for his name, and he introduces himself as Jin Jaehyun, while she says she's Bae Jisoo. They then enter the building and take the elevator up to their apartments. Inside the elevator, Jisoo mentions she saw his friend with some snacks the other day. Jay realizes she's talking about Johnny and explains she's just a friend he works with. Jisoo seems a little surprised but relieved by Jay's answer about Johnny. They arrive at their floors and Jay says goodbye, telling her to get some rest. A while later, Jay gets out of the shower feeling refreshed and ready to relax. He sits down to eat a snack and comments that the tuna mayo sandwich is really good. After eating, he lies down on the bed to relax and scroll through his phone. Suddenly, he hears a knock on the door and wonders who it could be. He asks who it is, and a voice on the other side identifies herself as his neighbor. Jay opens the door and finds Jisoo standing there with a friendly look. She holds up a bag and invites him to have a drink with her. Jay is completely surprised by his neighbor's unexpected invitation. Jisoo smiles at him, eagerly waiting for his response to the invitation. He hesitates for a moment and wonders if he should say no to her, but he decides he won't turn down her invitation and accepts the proposal. She then asks if they can drink at his place, because her apartment is a mess. Jisoo asks him to come to her apartment in 5 minutes, and he agrees to the idea. She runs back to her apartment to get ready for Jay's visit. She can't believe he said yes so quickly, and that he's coming to her apartment. In a panic, she starts to hastily clean up the mess in her apartment. A little later, Jay goes to her apartment and thinks his hidden instincts are telling him it's dangerous. He thinks that in his past life, he would have followed his instincts without question, but in this life he wants to try not to, and she opens the door and invites him inside the apartment. She says it's not payday, so she only has snacks. She thanks him again for his help and says she really wanted to return the favor. Jisoo comments that he seems very different, and he asks if she really thinks so. She explains explains that they've bumped into each other before but never talked, and she feels a change in him. Jay just says that a lot has happened to him recently. He remembers how his original self passed away in his past life, and that now he's living in the body of the late Jin Jaein. The image of his past life flashes through his mind like a memory. He thinks that after all that, he never had a moment to stop and look back, because he was running non-stop to build his new company and his future. Back in the present, Jisoo says she doesn't know what he's been through, but she suggests he forget everything for a while and have fun with her. Jay stares at her for a moment, thoughtful after her supportive words. He agrees and says maybe he'll do that, and they toast with their drinks. The scene shows several empty drink cans, indicating they drank quite a bit. Jisoo then asks about the pretty woman from before, and if she's really just a friend. Jay denies that Sami is his girlfriend and jokes that on the inside, she's like a guy. Jisoo is doubtful and says friends always say that, but he insists it's true. She asks what's true, and gets closer to him to hear the answer. Suddenly, Jisoo lays her head on Jay's shoulder, leaving him completely surprised. He realizes she just fell asleep there and wonders how she did that. Jay then sits in silence, watching his neighbor sleep peacefully on his shoulder. The scene changes, and morning arrives with the sound of birds outside the window. The alarm goes off, and Jisoo wakes up startled in her own room, confused. She sits up in bed and wonders what on earth happened last night. Jisoo realizes he put her to bed, covered her up, and simply left in the bathroom. She takes a shower and lets out a sigh, thinking about what happened. She then admits to herself that now she likes him even more, for real. As she leaves her apartment, Jisoo looks down the hallway, hoping to find Jay, but when she sees he's not there, she wonders if he's already gone to work. Jay walks alone down the street towards the company office. He thinks that last night he followed his instincts and had a beer with Jisoo, but in the end, he managed to control himself and acted rationally with her. The memory of him gently covering her with the blanket flashes through his mind. Now he feels pathetic for not sleeping well and going to work so early. Suddenly, Jay stops and looks at his cell phone with a curious expression. The scene shifts to the subway, where Johnny is sitting peacefully in one of the seats. In the same car, the long-haired hitman watches her from a distance. He discreetly stares at her while holding on, so he doesn't fall with the train's movement. He thinks he heard she dismissed her driver, but didn't think she would use the subway. Johnny then turns her head in his direction, as if she felt his gaze. The hitman wonders if she noticed him, but dismisses the idea, thinking it's impossible. However, a small smile on Johnny's face shows she knows she's being followed. As she leaves the station, she calmly walks up the stairs with the hitman right behind her. The man continues to follow her closely, keeping a safe distance between them. He watches her blend in with the crowd going up the station stairs. Suddenly, he loses sight of her and stops in surprise midway. He looks around and wonders where she went so fast. Cursing the situation, he finally spots her further ahead and realizes he needs to hurry. The hitman starts running and is surprised by how fast she's walking. He runs desperately through the streets to try and catch up to his target. Suddenly, he realizes she's leading him somewhere on purpose. In an alley, Johnny stops and confronts him, asking if he's there to take her out. She then challenges him to do it right there with what he has on him. Johnny adds for him to use whatever he has in his bag. The hitman realizes she's not just some rich girl and looks at her more seriously. He throws his bag on the ground and says if that's what she wants, he'll grant her wish. He pulls a huge sword from the bag and lunges to attack Johnny with everything he's got. The hitman swings his blade in a swift arc to cut his opponent. Johnny draws her own blade and perfectly blocks the attack. The hitman is shocked by her move and can't believe what he's seeing. As they trade blows, he thinks that the way she moves is very. He completes his thought, finding her beautiful as he faces her during the fight. Johnny attacks the hitman with her blade. Starting an intense fight, the hitman is impressed by her skill and finds her beautiful. Johnny keeps her concentration fully focused on his movements. The enemy is enjoying the situation and continues to attack with a smile. The two trade fierce blows, their blades clashing with force. The impact of the fight causes one of the weapons to hit the ground. The hitman tries to focus. Remembering his mission is to eliminate her, he lunges again, leaping toward Johnny to take her out. She notices that his speed has increased significantly during the fight. Johnny notes that his attacks seem wild, but are actually calculated. She realizes his precision is on a whole different level. A strike surprisingly passes extremely close to Johnny's face. She ends up getting grazed and groans in pain from the swift attack. Johnny worries, knowing the situation will get worse if this continues. In the middle of dodging, she notices something on the ground near them. She spots one of the blades that had fallen during the intense clash. The two continue to exchange rapid attacks with no time to rest. Johnny seizes the chance and manages to retrieve the fallen blade from the ground. The hitman is surprised to see his opponent's quick reaction. She tells him she's borrowing the weapon. Since he wasn't using it, the man just grits his teeth, annoyed by Johnny's audacity. With two weapons in hand, Johnny charges forward, determined for a direct fight. The blades clash violently again, producing sparks. Johnny mentally complains that in her old body, she could have won with one hand. The fight continues with swift movements from both sides in the alley. The hitman also feels the difficulty of fighting in his current body. Suddenly, Jay appears just in time and blocks the enemy's attack. Jay jumps into the middle of the fight, striking the hitman with a powerful blow. Jay's kick lands squarely on his opponent, sending him flying into a wall. The hitman staggers to his feet and asks who this man is. Without giving him time for an answer, Jay lands another fierce blow on him. Jay delivers a quick sequence of punches that stuns his opponent. He finishes with a strong kick, sending the hitman flying to the ground. Johnny reveals that she sent him her location, just in case. Jay says he came early because of the suspicious message he received. The hitman gets up, annoyed that he couldn't react to the blows. He analyzes the situation. Realizing the strength of his new adversary, he notices the two are talking calmly, not paying him any mind. The man decides to attack them to see if their calm is real or just carelessness. Jay senses the movement, and his eyes gleam with pure determination. With extreme ease, Jay blocks the hitman's attack with his knife. Jay dodges the counter attack and quickly moves behind him. He lands a precise strike that cuts the hitman, giving him no chance. The man falls again, letting out a groan of pain as he's defeated. He smirks and asks if Siadwang also sent Jay here. The hitman realizes their attitude was genuine composure all along. He admits that Siadwang only sent him to take out a rich girl, but now he understands that this rich girl really knows how to fight and that she has someone extremely strong watching her back at all times. He then asks out of curiosity if the two of them are a real couple. Jay laughs, denies they're a couple, and points the knife at his neck. He tells his opponent to say his last words. Before it's all over, Johnny calmly approaches and asks if he'd like to join them. She says she really wants to hire him, even knowing the offer is unusual. Jay thinks to himself that being recruited by your own target must be very strange. Johnny asks why he stays with his current company, and he says he does it for the money. She questions if there's no loyalty, and he assures her that company doesn't deserve it. Johnny proposes to let him go if he promises to at least think about her offer. The hitman asks what she'll do if he comes back to try and take her out again. She just smiles confidently and says she'll make him the same offer again if that happens. The man accepts the condition and asks her to let him go right now. He walks away down the alley as Johnny shouts for him to think carefully about her invitation. Jay asks if it's really okay to do that and complains about her dumping the hard work on him. The hitman continues walking alone through the city streets, thinking about everything. He remembers Johnny's beautiful smile and becomes fascinated by the image of her. The man thinks that to see that smile again, he'll have to try to take her out one more time. The scene changes, showing the modern entrance of Jay and Johnny's new company building. Inside the company, dozens of new employees in black suits wait in line. Johnny observes the group and finds it odd that they all wear similar glasses. The new hires are dazzled by Johnny's beauty and pledge their loyalty. The team consists of 2 art specialists and 2 talented programmers. Johnny explains that the company structure is unusual, but tells everyone to trust their leader. She promises to do her best, and the new employees respond with enthusiasm. They all feel highly motivated to impress the young vice director. Johnny smiles, pleased with the group, but still thinks about recruiting the hitman from the alley. The scene shifts, focusing on the top of the modern building of the large Siagwang organization. In the director's office, the boss complains that their best hitman returned empty-handed. The hitman, named Tak Song, apologizes to his superiors for the failure. Manager Choi yells angrily, saying apologies won't solve this problem. He continues to humiliate Tak Sung, questioning his skills as their best warrior. Annoyed by the taunts, the hitman glares at him with a deadly, frightening look. The manager stammers in fear and asks what he thinks he can do to him here. He tries to maintain his composure, believing the hitman wouldn't dare attack him. The organization's director intervenes and tells the manager to stop the argument at once. The director asks Tak Seung to explain directly to him everything that happened on the mission. The hitman reveals that the target was a skilled fighter and had a very strong guard. The director realizes the mission is complicated and understands the conditions imposed by HK. He decides they need to change their approach, but the hitman immediately interrupts him. Tak Sung states with determination that he himself will go back to finish the job. The director smiles, realizing the warrior's pride has been deeply wounded. He tells the hitman to see it through, but the man only wants to prove his own will. Tak Seung thinks that what he wants to prove to himself is his own determination. A while later, the director calls manager Choi for a private conversation in his office. He asks why their strongest warrior has never tried to move up in the organization. The director explains that he has no attachment to the company, and men with nothing to lose are dangerous. He says the hitman could take him out right there and walk away if he wanted, leaving the manager shocked. The boss warns him not to provoke Tak Seong, reminding him of what happened to the previous manager. The manager worries about how to report another failure to the spoiled client from HK. The director laughs at the situation and thinks about acting like a man with nothing to lose himself. At HK, the wealthy client slams his hand on the table, furious to hear about another failure in the plan. Director Joe stares at manager Choi, who is surprised by his boss's serious look. Suddenly, the director slaps manager Choi violently across the face, taking him by surprise. He grabs the manager by the collar, who tries to threaten him, saying he'll lose the client. The director lands another strong blow, asking who he thinks he is to act like that. Hurt, the manager begs him to stop, and the director questions if he should abandon the mission. He says that although they'd lose a lot of money, something else would disappear if he did. With a grim smile, the director reveals that the reason for keeping the manager around would end right there. The director says making him disappear in the basement would be easy, and the manager remembers his boss from HK. Director laughs and challenges him to call Han Ju-seok, assuring him he doesn't care about his life. He explains that Ju-seok would prefer the manager to disappear quietly, and the man realizes it's true. The director lets him go and tells the manager to think carefully about what he does from now on. The manager fears for his own life, knowing it will be the end for him if the HK mission goes wrong. He, desperate, bows deeply and begs the director to continue with the service. The director accepts with a cruel smile, while the manager thinks he did his best. The narrator says that now everything depends on Tak Song to finish the job correctly. The scene focuses on the hitman's shoes, which suddenly stop in the middle of the sidewalk. Tak Sung looks up, seeming to have found his target in the middle of the night. He spots a brightly lit diner where people are gathering to eat. Johnny invites Jay to dinner, claiming he only wants to stay close to her out of concern. Jay denies being concerned and just asks her to hurry up and choose what they're going to eat. The two enter the diner, which is open all through the night. While eating, Johnny asks Jay what he thinks the hitman will do next. Jay is confused, and she clarifies that she's referring to the man who tried to take her out earlier. Jay theorizes that he'll lay low for a while before attempting a surprise attack. He considers that the enemy could use a car bomb or even a sniper. Johnny agrees, but recalls that getting that kind of weapon in the country is extremely difficult. Jay suddenly stops talking when he notices something very strange happening. Johnny asks what's wrong, and he discreetly points with his finger toward the entrance. To their complete surprise, the hitman Tak Song is standing right in front of them. Jay is left completely speechless. Realizing all his theories were wrong, the hitman starts walking slowly toward the table, where the two are sitting. Jay and Johnny stare at him in surprise. Not understanding how he dared to come here, Jay wonders how he has the nerve to show his face right after their fight. He thought the enemy would be smarter than to expose himself like that. Tak Song stops beside Johnny's table, who watches him with deep suspicion. The hitman remains silent, just observing the two of them in the diner. Johnny loses her patience and questions what he thinks he's doing there. Suddenly, he sits down next to Jay, leaving both of them completely shocked by his action. Tak Song says he needed to see her in person, and Johnny asks what he's so sure about. The hitman confesses with a slight smile that he's fallen for her and therefore can't take her out. Johnny is left completely stunned and shocked by the man's sudden declaration. Jay starts laughing uncontrollably at the situation, while Johnny complains about his laughter. She tries to clear things up, telling the hitman she can't return his feelings. The man asks if she already has a boyfriend, and Johnny quickly denies any relationship. Desperate, she says that's not the issue, but the fact that she can't accept these feelings. Tak Sung says he doesn't care about that, as long as he can stay close to her. He states that he's going to join her company, and Jay mockingly supports the decision. With no way out, Johnny agrees to let him join the company, and the man celebrates getting what he wanted. Jay, as the president, makes the hiring official by shaking hands with his newest employee. He approves the hire with a thumbs up and a confident smile on his face. Johnny watches the handshake in despair, thinking this situation is going to drive her crazy. The next day, Director Joe receives some unexpected news and is completely shocked at the company. He finds out that the hitman Tak soon suddenly resigned, and the manager doesn't understand why either. As he tries to process the resignation, his phone starts ringing on the desk, catching his attention. The director panics when he sees on his phone screen that the call is from the organization's president. He answers quickly, saying he'll come up immediately to speak with the president. The man swallows nervously, knowing the atmosphere in the boss's office must not be good at all. He enters President Seo Young Man's office, maintaining a deeply bowed and respectful posture. The president calmly comments that he always used to forget to take his daily vitamins. Young man calmly pours a few green pills into the palm of his hand. He swallows them all at once, saying that now he doesn't go a day without taking them regularly. The president extends the vitamin bottle toward the director with a serious look. Director Joe thanks him for the gesture with a nervous smile as he accepts the pills in his hands. Young man asks angrily why their best hitman would resign right now. Stuttering, the director tries to explain, saying he just received the report on the incident. The president warns him with a frightening smile that he was also very shocked by the news. He reveals that he only allowed Joe to act freely because his actions brought benefits. Young man confesses that he never truly trusted him and only tolerated his actions for the profit. The boss admits that Joe was useful for eliminating rivals and bringing in lucrative projects for the company. The director tries to say something, but is cut off by the president's menacing presence. President Young Man warns that he will not tolerate financial losses for the organization. Joe promises to resolve the situation at any cost, but the president orders him to stop. He tells the director to abandon the mission immediately, leaving the man speechless. The president explains that while it's important to persist in a job, knowing when to retreat is also necessary. Young Man says that knowing when to fold on a losing bet is an essential lesson. He tells the director to learn the lesson, and Joe thanks him for the advice with his head bowed. Suddenly, a knock on the door interrupts their conversation in the main office. The president tells Director Park to come in, leaving Joe surprised by the visit. The handsome Director Park Tae-min enters the room with firm steps and a confident look. Joe realizes the president called him in to replace him, and that his time there is over. The president dismisses Director Joe, who bows and leaves the room, humiliated. Joe walks past his rival in the hallway, feeling the bitter defeat of being replaced. Director Park whispers something to the president while watching Joe leave the room. Joe glances back and sees the two of them whispering about the current situation. He walks away furiously, thinking about how the president discarded him at the first sign of failure. Joe realizes he was just used by the boss and thinks his rival would love to see him like this in a bar. Bang man. Gi laughs out loud upon hearing that the hitman joined their company. He finds it ironic that the man sent to take out the vice director is now working with them. Jay asks what he thinks of the new hire. Knowing he came from Seodwang, Bang explains that Tak Song is a great acquisition and that his joining will bring huge profits. Jay asks if he is their strongest warrior, and Bang says he is only their best hitman. Bang says that the leaders of Seogwang climbed the ladder through connections, and that there are other strong people there. Jay asks if he's ready to take down the top leaders of their organization. Bang drinks his beer happily and says that with Jay as president, everything will work out. He suggests that they shouldn't try to attack the top of the organization right from the start. Jay agrees and says they'll start by attacking their power base first. Bang adds that if they hit the right spot, their empire will crumble. They make a toast, determined to give it their all starting next week. Elsewhere, the report states that the vice director had a skilled bodyguard. The voice warns that the failure is the client's fault for omitting that important information. The assistant reveals that Seogwang has washed its hands of the matter and no longer wants to continue with the elimination job. Han Juseok looks out over the city and says that since things are this way, there's no other choice but to accept it. The secretary is very surprised by his calm reaction and thought his boss would explode with anger. Juseok tells the assistant to go home and rest, as it's the weekend and he needs a break. The man bows respectfully and says goodbye, leaving his boss alone to gaze at the beautiful city view. Later, the assistant takes the noisy subway back home. After a tiring day at work, he still finds Juseok's reaction very strange and wonders if his boss has simply given up. The train arrives at its destination, and the man walks toward his apartment building in the middle of the night. He reflects on the Seodwang director's actions and wonders if he had planned to give up from the beginning. The assistant types the code into the electronic lock to enter his quiet apartment. He opens the door and steps into the dark place, not realizing someone is hidden in the shadows of the wall. The man takes out his phone, starts choosing dinner on a food delivery app. He laments being home alone while the mysterious intruder silently approaches from behind him. The mysterious intruder prepares a sturdy rope with hands covered in black gloves. Suddenly, the rope is thrown around the assistant's neck, catching him completely by surprise. He tries to scream for help, but the intruder pulls the rope with extreme force. Choking him instantly, the two fall heavily to the floor, making a loud noise in the dark and silent apartment. The assistant struggles on the floor, desperately fighting to breathe somehow. He kicks the air in a panic, but the grip on his neck gets tighter and more painful. Gradually, his strength drains away, and he stops moving completely on the cold floor. The attacker finally releases the rope from the victim's neck and lets out a sigh of relief in the dark. He begins to go through the belongings and documents of the fallen assistant to leave no clues. The man neatly coils the rope used in the crime before leaving the apartment. The door to apartment number 301 closes, sealing the assistant's tragic fate. The intruder leaves the building disguised with a hat and glasses to avoid being identified by cameras. He makes a quick call and reports that the job was completed successfully without leaving a trace. The man says that with this job, their old debt is finally settled for good. In Juseok's office, the security guard reports that the hitman completed the job and paid off the old debt. Juseok pours a drink and acknowledges the news, dismissing the guard to be alone again. He pours the whiskey into the glass, thinking the assistant failed badly and deserved what he got. Juseok wonders irritably why eliminating Sami is the only difficult task for him right now. He drinks and questions if she somehow found out about his plans and prepared for the confrontation. Jo Seok decides to pause the attempts for now to investigate his sister's situation. Monday arrives, and the scene shows the main entrance of the new BB company in Seoul. The team leader walks through the reception area and spots the new employee sitting and waiting patiently. He hands a cup of hot coffee to Tak Song and welcomes his new coworker. The leader sips his coffee while discreetly analyzing the former Seodwang hitman's posture. He continues drinking thoughtfully, considering how he should act with the group's new member from now on. He thinks the man was one of the rival's best hitmen and must be very arrogant. The leader decides to put Tak Sung in his place and informs him that he already knew about his hiring. The new hire timidly agrees, showing a much calmer demeanor than expected. Baekjum Tae approaches with a confident smile and introduces himself as the company's executive director. Tak Seong is impressed to learn his title and imagines he must be extremely powerful. He observes Baekjum Tae with admiration, believing he must be a formidable warrior as well. Later, Johnny starts the planning meeting and asks Director Bang to present the next step. Director Bang announces that today's plan is to acquire one of the rival Seogwang's smallest subsidiaries. He reveals that their group's first target is a small trading company called Sangmin. Inside the office, the company owner answers a phone call and agrees with what he hears. He hangs up the phone and tells his subordinate that they need to talk in person soon. Suddenly, a knock on the door catches the attention of both men, who look surprised toward the entrance. The company owner asks if the employee ordered food, but he quickly denies it. The employee reaches out to open the door, thinking it might be a surprise delivery. Suddenly, the door is kicked in with extreme violence, and the man is sent flying from the impact. The company owner screams in fear as he sees Director Bang and Jay calmly entering the room. He recognizes the director from Seogwang and questions the reason for the invasion. Since he paid this month's tribute, Bang reveals he's no longer part of Seogwang and informs the owner that he'll be leaving soon too. Jay announces that from this day forward, the company will become part of his organization. The company owner smiles mockingly and asks who he thinks he is to make such a demand. Jay officially introduces himself as the president of BB Company and maintains his firm posture. The man scratches his head, not understanding, and asks if he really wants to bet the company on a fight. Jay replies that he's there to fight Seodwang, and the goons in the room get ready to attack. One of the goons stands up angrily, calling the president crazy for his audacity. He charges furiously at Jay, yelling for him to shut up and get out of there immediately. Jay dodges with ease and lands a powerful punch that knocks the goon out cold. As the man falls defeated, Jay states that to take over the company, he first needs to defeat all of them. He challenges all the goons present in the room to come at him at once, starting an all-out brawl. The scene focuses on the outside of the Sangmin Company building, where the confrontation is happening. On the ground floor, Baekjum, Taejani, and Tak Soon wait while the other two handle the invasion. Baek asks if just the two of them are enough for this mission, and Johnny assures him it's fine. Johnny stretches and comments that the office must be small and probably doesn't have many opponents. She smiles and says that soon it will be their turn to take action in the fight against the rival. Inside, Jay fights the opponents, delivering powerful kicks to take them down quickly. Director Bang also shows his incredible strength, knocking out the goons with brutal punches. Several enemies fall injured to the floor, unable to stop the devastating advance of the two invaders. One of the fallen goons desperately uses his phone to call for backup and report the invasion. He tells his allies to hurry because the situation inside the office is completely out of control. Reinforcements start running toward the location, shouting that some crazy people have invaded their office. Outside, Johnny smiles at the commotion and tells her companions that their time has come. Baekjum Tae cracks his knuckles with a smile on his face and says it's finally time to get to work. Tak Seong watches him curiously, wondering who this man who seems so confident could be. The hitman stares at him thoughtfully, trying to guess the true abilities of his new colleague. He wonders if Baek-joom Tae is just trying to test his skills in the upcoming fight. Baek-joom Tae gets nervous, remembering he bragged about being the third strongest in the group. With no other choice, he decides to charge at the enemies to keep his reputation intact. A goon tries to attack him with an iron pipe, but Baek-joom Tae prepares to dodge the blow. He dodges perfectly and lands a direct punch to the opponent's chin, knocking him to the ground. The other enemies are shocked to see their ally defeated so easily by him. Baek turns to his companions and asks if they aren't going to join the fight to help him out. Tak Seong accepts the invitation and quickly moves toward a direct confrontation with the goons. A furious opponent tries to strike the hitman, calling him bold for the surprise attack. With quick reflexes, Tak Song ducks and easily dodges the enemy's attack in the middle of the street. He counterattacks, delivering a strong and precise punch to quickly neutralize the aggressor. Baek-joom Tae also continues to land swift blows against the goons trying to surround him. The two fight in perfect sync, knocking out several opponents at the same time with great agility. In just a few moments, all the enemies are left defeated on the ground after the quick confrontation. Baek-joom Tae proudly adjusts his tie as he looks at the fallen adversaries around him. Tak Sung watches him in silence, acknowledging that he truly possesses very good skills. Johnny finishes off the last opponent with a high, powerful kick that sends him straight to the ground. She sarcastically compliments Baek-joom Tae for trying so hard in that quick fight. The director boasts that he just wanted to set an example for his subordinates. Like a good leader, Johnny realizes Director Black is showing off for the newcomer and decides to just play along. Baek tells the rookie to learn from his dedication, and Tak Seong accepts the advice very politely. Johnny interrupts their conversation and decides to focus on what really matters right now. She comments that the situation upstairs with the company president should be resolved by now. In the main office, the goons are all defeated on the floor after the confrontation with Jae. The president of Sangmin clenches his fists in anger and decides to keep fighting with all his might. Jane notices the man is incredibly fast and dodges his attacks with agility. The opponent throws a sequence of punches, trying to hit Jae at all costs in the middle of the room. Jae is thrown back and realizes he's much stronger than the subordinates he defeated earlier. Watching the fight, Director Bang thinks that even in a small company, the leader still has value. Bang thinks about intervening but decides to let the two presidents settle the dispute in a fair duel. He believes the opponent will accept defeat better if he's beaten by the group's own leader. Jae takes advantage of an opening and delivers a devastating sequence of punches against his opponent. He lands a direct punch to the Sangmin president's face, who feels the impact of the brutal blow. Jae ends the fight with a spectacular high kick that sends his defeated opponent crashing against the table. Director Bang watches the end of the fight and concludes that the man will now accept defeat without complaint. A short time later, the place is cleared so the leaders can discuss the business deal. The owner of Sangmin asks in surprise why Director Bang is also participating in this private meeting. Jae explains that Bang is no longer a mere employee, but the new director of his newly formed company. The man ironically questions if leaving a giant like Seogwang is really a promotion. Jae responds with complete confidence that his company, BB Company, will swallow Seogwang whole in the future. The owner of Sangmin is intrigued by Jae's audacious plan and asks what he's really planning. Jae reminds him that Seogwang just exploits its small subsidiaries without showing any respect. He reveals his plan to unite all the exploited subsidiaries to create a force of opposition against the rival. The man asks if they are acting like rebels against an enemy army, but Jae smiles at the comparison. Jae corrects the definition, saying the term "revolutionaries" fits his plans much better, impressed by the young president's courage. The owner of Sangmin lets out a laugh of admiration. He praises Jae's courage and determination, stating that he is a truly different kind of leader. The man admits admits he understands why Director Bang left, a giant company, to follow the young president. Jay calmly adjusts his suit and decides to end the conversation to formalize the new business deal. He extends his hand and invites his former adversary to work together from now on. The two seal the deal with a firm handshake, uniting the companies under the BB Company banner. The narrator announces that on Monday, the acquisition of the Sangmin Company was completed with absolute success. On Tuesday, the day dawns sunny, signaling the start of another mission for Jay's group. The scene focuses on the facade of Songsu Capital, the second target on the group's acquisition list. The owner of the place is Go Song Su, an illegal loan shark who is frightened by the presence of the invaders. He angrily asks what they are doing, and Jay enters the room, stepping past the defeated goons. Jay simply replies that they came to do business, and completes another acquisition for his company. As they leave the building, the loan shark recognizes Baek Joom Tae and asks about the fate of his old company. He mentions hearing rumors that Platinum Finance had recently gone bankrupt. Baek Joom Tae explains that his company didn't go bankrupt, but was acquired by the powerful BB Company. The loan shark asks if Baek was also defeated by the president, and the director suggests keeping a positive outlook. He jokes that if you can't beat the enemy, the best path is to simply join them. On Wednesday, the team moves on to the next target, focusing on the facade of the Hwadwong Company office. A goon runs out of the building in a panic, yelling for his allies to catch the invaders on the street. The owner, Im Ho-gum, runs furiously into the fight. Not understanding what BB Company is, Johnny calmly steps in front of him and suggests everyone take a moment to breathe first. The man ignores her advice and lunges with a violent punch at Johnny, who tries to dodge the attack. She is hit by the strong blow and ends up falling to the ground as the attacker keeps running. Johnny quickly gets up, angry, and complains that the man acts like a wild, furious boar. Johnny runs after the attacker, annoyed, promising that she will take care of catching that wild boar herself. Tired, the man stops in the middle of the alley, out of breath, thinking he's going to die of exhaustion from running so much. He celebrates being fast, but is suddenly surprised by Jay, who appears, leaping from the rooftops. Jay prepares to deliver a devastating aerial attack with his feet, aiming directly at the aggressor. He hits the man with a powerful downward kick, leaving the enemy clueless as to what just happened. The impact of the blow echoes through the silent alley, definitively knocking the aggressor to the ground. The aggressor is left completely bloodied and defeated after being unable to withstand Jay's attack. Jay tells the man that from now on, he should cooperate amicably with BB Company. The man accepts the situation and comments that he's already heard very strange rumors about their company around town. Johnny smirks and says that rumors of their strength are spreading very quickly. Director Bang agrees, saying their bad reputation is growing at an accelerated pace in the market. Jay is pleased and says they should use this momentum to continue growing without stopping. On Thursday, the team arrives to take over another company, and the owner questions them arrogantly. Without wasting time on talk, Jay shatters the office's glass window with a violent kick. While the goons are down, Johnny picks up a nameplate with the president's name from the desk. She reads the name and Jay, yawing on the nameplate, and finds it strange that his name isn't the company's name. Baek Joom Tae appears and asks if there's a problem with the plate, making Johnny feel awkward. The acquisition of the distribution company is completed, and night falls over the famous city diner. The entire BB Company team gathers at one of the tables to eat burgers and celebrate their results. Jay and Johnny eat peacefully, enjoying a moment of rest after a week full of missions. Tak Song and Baek Joom Tae eat French fries under the watchful eye of Director Bang. Director Bang watches everyone in silence, seemingly planning the company's next important step. He comments that everyone seems very tired after working hard without rest all week. Bang says the effort was worth it, and that now their company is the most talked about topic in the entire region. He He takes a sip of his drink and announces that the next day they will pay a visit to a special person. Bang says the person can help them grow, and the scene changes to Friday at the beverage distributorship. The team arrives at the Sanghan Liquor Company warehouse to carry out another acquisition for the group. On the warehouse floor, several security guards are already defeated and unconscious. After the initial confrontation, one of the remaining goons charges, screaming in rage, with a broken glass bottle in his hands. Jay easily dodges the bottle attack and delivers a strong kick to push the attacker away. He lands quick and precise strikes, neutralizing the threat without giving the opponent a chance to defend. The green bottle shatters on the warehouse floor after the accurate blow disarms the attacker. Desperate, the man points the remaining glass shards and begs them not to come any closer. Director Bang calmly enters the warehouse, observing the defeated goon's desperate scene. The man tries to strike Bang with the glass shards, yelling for him to stay away. Bang approaches without fear and firmly grabs the attacker's wrist with extreme ease and precision. He twists the man's arm, causing him to scream in pain and drop the dangerous object he was holding. The remaining glass shards scatter across the warehouse floor after being knocked down by Bang's force. With a clean punch, Bang knocks out the man, who falls groaning in pain onto the beverage warehouse floor. He immobilizes the fallen opponent on the ground, ensuring he is no longer a threat to the group. Bang throws the attacker to the ground for good, ending the confrontation in the beverage warehouse. The man screams in pain as he feels the violent impact against the concrete floor of the warehouse. Suddenly, a mysterious voice calls out Bang Man's name, saying it's been a long time since they've seen each other. Surprised by the familiar voice, Director Bang lets go of his opponent and turns to see who just arrived. The real owner of the place, Song Han Keel, appears and says they have many important matters to discuss. Director Bang gives a confident smirk and agrees that they really do have a lot to talk about. Han Keel recalls that the last they saw each other was during their old boss's tragic funeral. Bang respectfully mentions the name of the deceased boss, Jang Suk Go, whom he faithfully served in the past. Han Keel says he warned Suk Go never to trust President Seo Young Man, but he didn't listen to the advice. The narrator explains that Bang's old boss was ultimately betrayed, kicked out of Seogwang, and passed away in a suspicious accident. Jay understands that the distributor's owner was very close to the old boss Director Bang served. He asks about Han Keel's importance to the plan, and Bang explains that he led a large group. Bang says the rival's president offered a merger, but he refused and split the businesses among his men. He reveals he later realized that Han Keel knew he would be discarded if he agreed to join the rival. Han Keel preferred to disband his own group to save his allies from certain destruction by the rival. Jay deduces that this means many businesses in the rival's territory are run by his former subordinates. Bang's plan is to convince Han Keel to ally with them so that his entire former group will follow them in the fight. Han Keel asks if they plan to take on the rival, and Bang clarifies that the idea of a fight comes from his boss. Jay takes the opportunity to formally introduce himself as the president of the newly created BB company. The man observes him carefully and comments that Jay looks too young and handsome to be the president. Jay responds ironically, saying it's funny to hear that from someone whose men were just defeated by him. Han Keel laughs at Jay's verbal comeback and realizes he wasn't born to be anyone's subordinate. He says he used to be like that too and asks why a man like him submitted to working for the rival. The owner confesses he wanted to face the rival, but couldn't risk the lives of those who trusted him. Director Bang listens silently to his old companion's words, understanding his past reasons. Han Keel assures them he still hates the rival and that his greatest wish is to ally with them to destroy it for good. However, he explains that he can't make such a serious decision without thinking about the future of his former subordinates. For that reason, the man decides to reach inside his jacket to pull out his hidden weapon. Han Keel draws a sharp knife and says he needs to personally test the young president's strength. Bang senses the immediate threat and moves to intervene, but Jay signals with his hand for him to stand down. Jay asks the director not to interfere, as he wants to handle this situation alone with his opponent. The president asks if Han Chill will really cooperate if he is defeated, and the man confirms that he will. Jay calmly loosens his tie and challenges the former leader to come and test his skills in combat. Han Chill charges forward quickly, wielding the knife to start the direct confrontation against the president. He delivers a swift strike, but Jay manages to dodge with agility, ducking at the last second. The man continues to attack relentlessly, but Jay dodges every blow, showing impressive reflexes. Jay takes advantage of a gap in his opponent's defense and moves quickly to deliver a counter attack. He dodges another dangerous thrust, keeping his focus entirely on the opponent's rapid movements. With narrowed eyes, Jay analyzes the trajectory of the strikes to find the exact moment to attack. He spins his body quickly and delivers a powerful kick that hits his opponent squarely in the stomach. The impact of the kick sends Han Chill flying back violently, causing him to lose his balance in the warehouse. Jay continues the relentless assault, knocking over boxes on top of his opponent to keep him under constant pressure. Han Chill quickly recovers from the fall, sliding across the floor to regain his combat stance. He charges once more, delivering a swift strike with the knife towards the president's face. Jay blocks the attack with precision, using his foot to disarm the opponent and send the knife flying across the warehouse. He takes advantage of the disarm and delivers a spectacular high kick that definitively ends the fight. Han Chill spits blood upon receiving the devastating blow and collapses, defeated. On the concrete floor, the opponent's knife falls far away on the floor, confirming Jay's undisputed victory in the private duel. The man admits his painful defeat on the warehouse floor, impressed by the president's incredible strength. Jay points the recovered knife toward his defeated opponent's face, maintaining a serious and focused gaze on him. He calmly asks if that display of strength was enough to convince him to cooperate. Han Chill smiles through the blood and admits the test was more than enough to earn his respect. Satisfied with the answer, Jay puts the weapon away, pulls out a clean handkerchief to give to his new ally. The man accepts the handkerchief to clean his face, commenting that it's been a long time since he fought like that. He wipes the blood from his face, admitting with good humor that the beating hurt a lot less than he imagined. However, he acknowledges that he's no match for someone young and trained who never stopped practicing. Han Chill invites the president for a drink to talk amicably about their future plans. Director Bang is confused by the sudden invitation and wonders where they'll get a drink there. The former leader points to the warehouse, reminding them that they are literally surrounded by bottles of booze. Jay immediately approves of the idea and opens one of the bottles from the stock to celebrate the new alliance. The three men toast with their beer bottles to seal the newest and most promising partnership. Jay Bang and Han Chill sit on plastic crates to drink and chat casually at the location. Han Chill complains a bit about the taste of the warm beer, but says the moment is still very good. Jay looks at his bottle and comments that the drink's flavor stands out much better when it's warm. The former leader sincerely praises Jay's combat skills, but questions him about his plans. He asks how Jay had the audacity to plan to take on a powerful giant like Xiaoguang. Jay simply replies that it's just his way, and his partner agrees that he already expected that answer. The young president states he has complete confidence, as long as he has loyal people by his side to help him. He assures them that now, with Han Chill's help, he feels even stronger and more confident of success. Jay extends his hand and compares his new ally to a legendary, well-forged sword that is worth more than common iron. Han Chill finds the comparison funny and says it was the most creative compliment he's ever heard. He accepts the handshake, saying the compliment made him both annoyed and happy at the same time. With this last alliance, BB Company managed to take over 5 companies in enemy territory in just 1 week. The wave created by the group began to spread, causing consequences far greater than they could control. In the early morning, birds chirp around the building where the young president resides. Jay stirs slightly in bed, seemingly having a nightmare in the middle of his peaceful sleep. Suddenly, he opens his eyes, startled, waking up abruptly at the start of the day. He sits up in bed and reflects on dreaming again about the strange boy who sold him the bracelet. In the dream, the boy asked if Jay was making good use of his new chance at life. The young president followed him in the dream as the boy questioned where he was currently living. Jay replied that he was living in a country very far away and different from where he used to live in the past. The boy found the answer surprising and wanted to know what Jay was doing there. That was so important. Jay revealed he had started a company strong enough to finally fight the Great Union. The boy stumbled on the sidewalk and lamented Jay's answer, showing concern for his future. He said that didn't sound like a new life, and Jay questioned why he thought so. The boy explained that Jay was just continuing his old life instead of trying to live something completely new. Jay argued that he couldn't ignore the people who betrayed and took him out in his past life. The boy suggested that he simply pretend those bad people no longer existed for him. He reminded him that his enemies were far away and asked why Jay would voluntarily seek them out. The boy was convinced that if he decided they didn't exist, it would become the absolute truth. He laughed, saying that being reincarnated in someone else's body after buying a bracelet was already absurd. The boy added that talking to him there felt like the craziest, most delirious dream possible. He smiled, suggesting that perhaps this whole new reality was just a grand delusion of Jay's mind. The boy said that the story of the betrayal and his own current existence could be just one big dream. Jay was confused by the boy's enigmatic words, who then said goodbye, telling him to wake up from the dream. Jay gets out of bed, thinking about the bizarre dream with that boy who said so much nonsense to him. At the bathroom sink, water runs from the faucet as he gets ready to start his workday. He splashes cold water on his face, trying to wash away the strange thoughts created by the nightmare. While drying his face with a towel, Jay continues to ponder the meaning of that dream with the boy. He looks at himself in the bathroom mirror, thoughtful, before starting to get ready for the office. Jay starts throwing punches in the air, remembering that in dreams, movements always seem very slow. Practices quick jabs at the mirror, feeling the real and precise speed of his own movements. He concludes with certainty that all of this is real, but admits the dream left him in a reflective state. Jay decides he needs to focus on work and starts brushing his teeth so he won't be late. He calmly adjusts his suit's tie, preparing for another day of important meetings. The young president puts on his suit jacket and checks his appearance to make sure it's impeccable for the office. He checks his phone, which shows it's almost 9 o'clock, and decides to leave soon to get breakfast. Jay opens his apartment door, determined to start the workday with total focus on business. In the hallway, he runs into his neighbor Jisoo waiting for the elevator, and she greets him cheerfully. Inside the elevator, Jisoo comments that he seems very busy, and Jay confirms that the past week was crazy. Jay smirks and asks Jisoo how she managed to guess he'd been so busy lately. She explains that they never ran into each other in the elevator and figured he was leaving very early and coming back late. The day dawns completely sunny, and birds begin to sing near the power lines. Jay playfully asks if she missed him, and Jisoo gets completely flustered by his comment. Jisoo pouts, pretending to be annoyed, and complains that his joke wasn't funny at all to her. Jay just watches her with a very calm gaze and a slight smile on his face as they walk together. She asks why he's looking at her like that, and Jay confesses that he likes running into her like this. Jisoo blushes at the unexpected statement and nervously asks if that was also a joke. Jay curtly replies that it wasn't and starts walking much faster, leaving her behind. She follows him and asks why he sped up, and he confesses that he's really hungry right now. The two decide to stop at the diner and order a quick portion of French fries and hot coffee. Jay starts eating his snack quickly, showing that he really needed to eat. Jisoo smiles, holding her coffee cup, and comments in a friendly way that he really did seem hungry. Jay agrees and asks about her schedule, and she checks her phone, seeing she still has plenty of time. The two continue talking very pleasantly. Sitting at a table near the large glass window, Jisoo takes a calm sip of her hot coffee, enjoying the quiet moment with Jay. Jay watches her in silence, seeming to relax a bit after the exhausting week he had with business. He becomes thoughtful for a few moments as he watches his neighbor very serenely. Jay thinks that maybe the new life the boy spoke of in his dream is exactly like this moment. Suddenly, the ringing of his cell phone breaks the silence and immediately gets Jay's attention. He answers the urgent call about Xiaoguang and says he needs to go there to solve the problem now. Jay sincerely apologizes to Jisoo, explaining that a very important work emergency came up. She smiles understandingly, saying it's okay and that she needs to get to her job soon too. The young president runs out of the place, thinking that he needs to keep fighting this life to the very end. He runs with determination, knowing his greatest enemies are still active somewhere in the city.